Chapter 497, Nearly Had a Heart Attack. After breakfast ended, Yuan continued to practice his movements by walking around the house, while Mei Feng and Mei Xiu watched him from the couch. Young master, I have been wondering for a while now, but how do you know where to go if you cannot see where you're going? Mei Feng suddenly asked him. Although Yuan has recovered his ability to move his body, he was still blind, meaning he shouldn't be able to see where he was going. Oh, I can see just fine with divine sense, Yuan casually said. Divine sense? What's that? Mei Feng asked, as she wasn't familiar with the cultivation world. I can basically see things around me as though I have eyes above my body without using my eyes, and the stronger my divine sense the further I can see. It's something cultivators can do after reaching a certain cultivation, I guess. I see. What a mythical power. Now I also want to start cultivating as soon as possible. Mei Feng mumbled to herself. About 3 hours later, someone suddenly started knocking on their door. It's me, Dr. Wang. Dr. Wang's voice resounded from outside. Hearing his voice, Mei Xiu got off the couch, but before she could go anywhere, Yuan said, I got it. Mei Xiu looked at him for a moment before nodding her head. Yuan then walked to the door and took a deep breath before opening the door. Welcome, Dr. Wang. Welcome, Xiuing. Yuan greeted them with a smile on his face after opening the door. Clang. Dr. Wang dropped the metal box in his hand that carried his tools when he saw Yuan standing before him at the door. Wang Xiuing pointed at him with trembling hands. You're standing? Dr. Wang exclaimed in a shocked voice, finishing the sentence Wang Xiuing couldn't utter. Yuan lowered his body and picked up the metal box dropped by Dr. Wang before speaking. Surprised? How? Wang Xiuing asked him a moment later. Let's continue this inside, shall we? Yuan said as he walked back into the apartment. However, both Dr. Wang and Wang Xiuing remained standing outside with a dazed look on their faces. It was not until Yuan invited them inside again that they finally began moving. Madame Mei Feng, you're here as well? Dr. Wang was surprised to see her in the living room. A lot has happened, she calmly said. Dr. Wang turned to look at Yuan, who was standing a few meters away, and nodded. I bet. Once everyone was seated, Dr. Wang spoke again. What happened to you, young master? How come you can move again? I nearly had a heart attack just now. Yuan showed a bittersweet smile and shrugged. I wish I could tell you, but I can't. I woke up like this. What? You woke up fully recovered? Wang Xiuing's jaw dropped after hearing this, as she expected him to say that had recovered after eating some heaven-defying treasure and that affected his real body. Yes, he nodded. I didn't really do anything special. When I woke up this morning, my body had magically recovered. It's a miracle. Dr. Wang mumbled in a low voice. Congratulations, you Tian. You have finally recovered. I knew you'd recover one day. Wang Xiuing suddenly started congratulating him. Even though Yuan had recovered without her help, she didn't feel bad at all. No matter how Yuan recovered, with or without her help, Wang Xiuing was just happy to see him finally recover. Thank you, but only my body has recovered. I'm still blind. Also, I want to see if there are any changes to my body, that's why I called you here. Yuan then said. Dr. Wang nodded. I understand. Sometime later, Yuan laid on his bed while Dr. Wang and Wang Xiuing inspected his body. After getting the results, Dr. Wang said, judging by the results, your body hasn't changed much since your last checkup. However, we can't really say for sure since this was done with basic equipment. Unless you get a more detailed examination at the hospital, we can't really say if your body had any significant changes. I see. I can't go to the hospital now since I am in the middle of something troublesome, but I will definitely visit you once I am able to. Yuan said. Something troublesome? Did something happen? Wang Xiuing asked him. Oh, it's a little complicated, but... Yuan proceeded to explain to them their situation with the Cultivators Association and what transpired yesterday night. What a bunch of arrogant and entitled pricks. Wang Xiuing exclaimed after hearing the story, feeling incredibly angry. Even Dr. Wang couldn't help but frown. He then said, Chairman Zhao is actually a patient of mine. I will speak with him later and try to convince him to stop this farce. However, Yuan shook his head and said, It's okay, Dr. Wang. I don't want to drag your family into this as well. I will deal with Chairman Zhao myself. Are you sure? Dr. Wang had a worried frown on his face. Yes, I have a plan, Yuan confirmed. If you say so, what are your plans now that you're able to move again? Are you going to return to the music industry? I really want to hear your music again. Wang Xiuing asked him a moment later. Yuan smiled and said, If you want to hear my music, You can visit me anytime and I will play for you. I want return to the music industry though. Really? It's a promise? Wang Xiuying said, her body trembling from excitement. A private performance from Yuan was something she'd dreamt of ever since she was a kid. Just let me get some instruments first, okay? I am empty-handed right now, he said. Oh, I have a piano at home. If you want, I can give it to you. I rarely play it anymore anyway. Wang Xiuying said, donating her piano to him. If you don't need it, I will take it off your hands. Then it's decided. I will have it delivered to you by tomorrow. Yuan nodded. Chapter 498, Grow Up? Alright, I have to return to the hospital now. You can stay here if you like, Xiuying. Dr. Wang said after chatting with Yuan for about half an hour. See you later, Dr. Wang, Yuan said to him. Yes, I will see you later. Once again, I'm so glad that you finally recovered. Let's hope it only gets better from this point. Dr. Wang left the place, but Wang Xiuying decided to stay there for a little longer. I still can't believe. Wang Xiuying mumbled in a low voice as she watched Yuan practice his movements by walking around the house. How come you know where to go? Wang Xiuying quickly realized this, as she wasn't aware that he could use divine sense in the real world. It's divine sense, Meishio explained to her. Wait, that divine sense? Wang Xiuying's eyes widened with shock. Although Mei Feng didn't know the significance behind divine sense, Wang Xiuying did. Yes. Meishio nodded. Unbelievable. Once Yuan was comfortable with his movements, he started doing exercises such as sit-ups and push-ups. Since he was a peak spirit warrior, strength and endurance weren't an issue for Yuan. It was only a matter of his form. 10 push-ups, 20, 30, 50. 100, Yuan managed to achieve 100 push-ups and sit-ups without any breaks and still had plenty of energy left by the end of it. Meanwhile, Wang Xiuying called a moving company to move her piano to their apartment. Alright, it's about time for me to leave. The piano should be here tomorrow afternoon, she said to them afterward. And she continued, I will also be here tomorrow to listen to you playing. Okay, see you later, Yuan said. Yuan then proceeded to continue his exercise, working up a good sweat. I am going to take a shower, Yuan said to them. Do you need help? Meishio subconsciously asked him since she was used to it. It's okay, I got it, Yuan said before entering the bathroom. Once Yuan entered the bathroom, Mei Feng looked at Meishio with a mocking smile. Looks like you're no longer needed now that he's recovered. Nonsense. Meishio quickly responded. Then what can you do for him now that he can do everything himself? I can still do the housework such as cleaning and cooking, she said. So basically a housewife. Are you going to assist him in the bed too? Mei Feng suddenly asked. Meishio immediately recalled their last shower together and blushed. Of course, Mei Feng was unaware of this and she continued, you know it's going to happen sooner or later. The young master may still be an innocent child now, but he will eventually mature and experience actual puberty. Once that happens, he will need a real woman to look after him. If you're not going to stand up for that position, someone will take him away from you, and you will truly no longer be needed at that time. I hope you still remember what I taught you. Meishio stared at Mei Feng with a deep frown. As much as she wanted to refute Mei Feng's claims, she knew that everything her mother said was the truth. You're already an adult, yet you haven't matured yet. Grow up, Meishio. You have the perfect opportunity to establish your position right now. If you let this chance get away, you'll regret it when the young master returns to his ordinary life and becomes surrounded by even more women. If I were in your shoes, I would already be pregnant by now. Meishio was left speechless by her mother's last sentence. Meanwhile, somewhere in the city, Mr. Johnson stood before the two cultivators that had abandoned their mission with a deep frown on his face. 4 grown men with over 10 years of military experience, yet you somehow lost to a little girl half your age, even running away with your tails tucked between your legs. Do you understand the word shame? This is what you get for underestimating Meishio when I specifically warned you to not underestimate her. Hearing Mr. Johnson's lecture, the two cultivators didn't dare to utter a single word. Johnson. That bitch killed Scorpion and Hawk. Is there anything we can do to avenge them? Mr. Johnson remained silent for a moment before speaking. How can you be so sure that they're dead? We watched that bitch snap Hawk's neck without mercy. There's no way he's still alive after that brutal strike. Even Scorpion had his neck twisted in a weird angle by a single punch. Mr. Johnson then said, they are still alive. What? Really? How do you know that? You think I don't have friends in the police force? They told me about the incident that had been marked as a robbery. Scorpion and Hawk had been taken to the hospital. They were on the verge of death when they arrived at the hospital, but they're not dead. The other two released a sigh of relief after hearing that their comrades were still alive. I wouldn't relax now if I were you. They may be alive, but they're currently in custody. I will have to speak with my buddies if they don't want to go to jail, Mr. Johnson said. What about the mission? One of them asked. The mission is a failure. Now that you've caused a commotion, we can no longer continue, or we will risk being investigated. I'm not particularly worried about being investigated, but our clients, the Yu family, definitely won't be happy if they're investigated, so we can only wait until things calm down for now. What about our pay? Mr. Johnson sneered and said, you still have the guts to ask for money after your embarrassing failure? I wouldn't be surprised if the Yu family asks for compensation for this failure. If that happens, it's coming out of your accounts. What? No way. After dealing with the two idiots, Mr. Johnson had to call the Yu family to let them know the result of the mission, which was a complete failure. Obviously, the Yu family wasn't happy when they heard this news, and they immediately demanded a full refund. Chapter 499, Aiming to be the First? You failed the mission. Don't give me this bullshit. I paid millions so you could do your damn job. I demand a full refund. Yu Yong shouted at his phone after receiving the news of their failure. Unfortunately, we have a no-refund policy, and you have agreed to this term before hiring us. If you want us to try again, we can do so at a discounted price, but your family will be at risk of getting investigated. If you accept this risk, we will go back and get Meishio one more time after receiving more payment. Meishio was stronger than any of us could have anticipated, so we will need more resources to take her back. I hope you understand. Yu Yong didn't immediately respond. Although he didn't mind an investigation since he has plenty of lawyers and friends with power, it wouldn't look good for his company if news spread that had hired merchants to kidnap a girl. However, as long as the news didn't spread, everything would be fine, and he had plenty of resources available to keep that from happening. How much? Yu Yong asked after a moment of silence. 10 million. Mr. Johnson quickly responded. 10 million? That's more than double what I paid you last time. And you consider that as a discount? This is clearly a scam. Yu Yong exclaimed. Yes, it's the discounted price. If not for the discount, I would have asked for 15 million. Since 4 cultivators between the 7th and 8th level weren't enough to bring Meishio back, we will have to increase our forces. I intend on bringing experts from around the world this time, so it will cost much more than usual. Yu Yong coldly sneered, using this many resources just to bring back a little girl. Aren't you ashamed of yourselves? After a moment of silence, Mr. Johnson said, with all due respect, if you think you have what it takes to make her return, go ahead. I will send you their location in a moment since we were paid to do so. If you want to continue working with us, send the money by next week. If not, then this is the end of our cooperation. Once again, I apologize for the inconveniences. Yu Yong hung up the phone after that and tossed it at the wall. A bunch of useless bastards. Seeing his reaction, Tang Li said, at least we have their location. We can have Yu Rou try to convince Meishio to return. Yu Yong looked at her with a pondering look. Why didn't we think of that sooner? We could have saved millions. If it's Yu Rou, I'm sure that she'll convince Meishio to return. Call her here. An hour later, Yu Rou arrived at their main location after being summoned by her parents. Yu Rou, we have a job for you. Yu Yong said to her with a solemn look on his face. Yu Rou could already guess what they wanted from her, but she acted ignorantly and asked, what is it, father? Yu Yong then handed her a piece of paper and said, Meishio is living here right now, and I want you to convince her to come back. Yu Rou then said, why do you want Meishio back? She left on her own accord, so I don't think she will return even if I ask her. That isn't for you to worry about. Tang Li said, and she continued, just bring Meishio back at all cost. Yu Yong then added, if you successfully bring Meishio back, I can consider lifting your restriction and allow you to meet with Tian again. After all, he's with Meishio right now. Really? Yu Rou expressed excitement after hearing this. Then I will go see Meishio tomorrow. Yu Yong laughed inwardly, seeing how easy it was convincing Yu Rou to help them. Sometime later, Yu Rou returned home. Since they're asking me for help, this must mean that the people they hired to bring Meishio back have failed? Yu Rou had no problem agreeing to help her parents. After all, she was only told to convince Meishio to return, and she gets to see her brother again in the process. I can't wait to see Meishio and brother again tomorrow after so long. Yu Rou went to sleep early on that day as she wanted the day to be over as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, after his shower, Yuan moved all of the furniture in the living room to the wall, freeing up a lot of space in the center of the room. "What are you doing, young master?" Mei Feng asked him. "I want to practice something," he said. After taking a deep breath, Yuan began moving his legs in an odd but rhythmic manner. That's... Meishio quickly recognized what Yuan was trying to do. Yuan tripped on himself a couple of seconds into his weird movements. "I don't understand." Mei Feng shook her head. "It's a movement technique," he said. "Ha. A movement technique I learned in Cultivation Online. I want to try practicing it in the real world as well." Indeed, Yuan was trying to learn the movement technique Vermilion Phoenix dominating the heavens. Since he could use flying daggers, it obviously meant that he could learn other techniques as well. And what better technique than a movement technique that will help him improve his overall movement? A movement technique? Good luck, young master. There are a lot of people trying to do the same. Mei Feng mumbled in a low voice. Yuan raised his eyebrows. Mei Feng then said, "Since we can use cultivation techniques from Cultivation Online, it only makes sense that other techniques could also be learned. Although nobody has managed to do so yet, there are plenty of people out there trying to become the first person to learn a technique that's not a cultivation technique." "Is that so?" "Of course, there's a good chance that someone out there has already succeeded but decided to keep it a secret." "Most likely," Yuan said with a smile on his face. Chapter 500. What do you think of my daughter? Yuan practiced his movement technique until it was time for dinner. After dinner, Yuan wanted to continue practicing, but Mei Feng said, "Young master, I get that you're excited about your recovery, but you shouldn't move around so much after eating. It's bad for your body. Furthermore, since you've only recently recovered, you shouldn't do such intensive exercises that could strain your body. We still don't know if you've actually fully recovered or not after all." "You're right, Miss Mei Feng. I got ahead of myself because of this sudden recovery that might only be temporary. I shouldn't stress my body too much or it could go back to being crippled." Yuan wasn't happy about restraining himself, but he agreed with Mei Feng. They still don't know if his body is fully recovered or if it was just temporary. He could wake up tomorrow and return to being a cripple. "Let's not say something so demoralizing, young master. I'm sure your body is fine now and it won't suddenly revert back to its previous state, but until we're confident that you're really okay, I wouldn't push my body so much if I were in your shoes." Mei Feng said. "I understand." Sometime later they prepared for bed. Once they entered the bedroom, Mei Feng suddenly asked him, "Young master, how about a body massage? I heard that getting a massage after a day of exercise will make everything more effective." "If you don't mind." Yuan nodded. "Please lie on the bed with your back facing the ceiling." Once Yuan laid on the bed, Mei Feng got on top of him and gently sat on his buttocks in a kneeling position. "Will you be okay if I did this? Am I too heavy?" Mei Feng asked him just in case. "I'm okay. You're not heavy at all," Yuan said, feeling two round and soft objects pressing on his butt. "Great." Mei Feng then started her massage on Yuan's back, starting from his neck and shoulders. "Oh, this feels great." Yuan released a satisfied sigh. "Thank you for the praises, young masters." After massaging Yuan for a few minutes, Mei Feng started speaking with him. "Young master, I have a few questions for you." "What is it?" "What do you think of my daughter, Meishio?" "What do I think of Meishio?" Yuan repeated the question. He then said, "She's a very important person to me and I owe a great deal to Meishio for assisting me. Without her company, I wouldn't have survived this long alone. I also admire her a lot for her work. Although I don't know what it's like working her job, I know it's not an easy job and not something a girl her age should be doing normally." "You're right, it's not easy working as a maid, especially not for the Yu family where the standards are many times higher. Even I cannot compare to her when I was her age, but I rarely praise her because I don't want her to feel complacent. I wouldn't be surprised if she hates me because of how I raised her, but looking at her now, I won't regret it even if she hates me." Mei Feng said with a gentle smile on her face. "I don't think Meishio hates you, Miss Mei Feng." Mei Feng chuckled a little before speaking. "Anyways, judging by your words, I will assume that you really like Meishio. Is that right, young master?" "Yes, I really like Meishio," he responded without hesitation. "Then would you mind living with her forever?" "No, I wouldn't. In fact, I would actually prefer it if we could remain like this forever." "That will be problematic," Mei Feng suddenly said. "Why would it be problematic?" "What? Isn't it obvious? Because we don't know what Meishio wants. Even if you want to be with her forever, what if she wants to leave in the future? What if she has to leave in the future when she wants to start her own family? Yuan was left speechless by her words, and he immediately began pondering. You're right. It's all up to Meishio in the end. As much as I want to be with her forever, I can't force her to stay with me. She has her own life as I have my own. Guess I can only enjoy our time together while it lasts. Yuan sighed. Yuan never really thought about Meishio leaving since she told him that she wanted to be with him in the past. However, people will inevitably change as they grow older, so there was a chance that Meishio might leave his side in the future. Let's not come to immediate conclusions, young master. Maybe Meishio wants to stay with you forever as well. If you're worried, why don't you ask her? In fact, I know how you can stay with her forever. Really? Oh. Yuan quickly asked her. Well, if you want someone to stay with you, you propose to them, of course. It's common practice in this world. Propose? What do I propose to her? That you want to stay with her forever, of course. However, you're still too inexperienced in this subject, so wait until you're a little older and more experienced before you actually propose to her, okay? Just don't make her wait too long or she will be gone before you get the chance. Mei Feng said to him. Although she wanted to help her daughter and Yuan get together, she didn't want to take advantage of Yuan's innocence to do so, as it would only hurt their relationship in the future. The only thing she can really do is help Yuan become aware of the situation and give him some advice. The rest will be up to him and Meishio. I understand, Miss Mei Feng. Thank you for the advice. Yuan said to her. I am merely doing my job as a mother, that's all, she said with a mysterious smile on her face. After giving Yuan an hour-long massage, Mei Feng closed the light and went to sleep. Let's do this again tomorrow. Good night, young master. Good night, Miss Mei Feng, Yuan said, quickly falling asleep due to Mei Feng's massage that had an immediate effect on his body. Chapter 501, Temporary. After falling asleep, Yuan returned to the realm of dreams once again, and the first thing he noticed was the handsome man from before, but he was sitting on a large boulder with a lonely expression on his face as he gazed at the drifting clouds. When Yuan saw his expression, all thoughts of trying to disturb his peace disappeared, and Yuan patiently stood there. It feels great to finally start moving again, huh? The handsome man suddenly spoke, his gaze still at the sky. Are you responsible for my sudden recovery? Yuan asked him. The handsome man turned to look at him and said, Me? I am merely an imagination in your dreams. How could I possibly do that? Even though you're strong? Yuan said. The handsome man laughed a little before speaking. There are things even the strongest beings in the universe cannot achieve. If you're not responsible for my recovery, then who, or what is? Who knows? Maybe you did it yourself by instinct. A cultivator is much more profound than you imagine. However, you shouldn't celebrate so early as your body isn't completely healed. What? What do you mean? How do you know that? Yuan had kind of expected this outcome when he heard Mei Feng say the same thing, but this handsome man appeared confident that he hasn't fully recovered yet. Because your body is still restricted by the curses. Your current freedom is merely temporary. If you don't continue to increase your cultivation, you will eventually return to your previous state. The handsome man said, leaving Yuan speechless. A moment of silence later, Yuan said, I want to increase my cultivation, but I am currently experiencing a bottleneck. I cannot break through to Spirit Master no matter what. I think it's because there isn't enough spiritual energy in my place. Blaming on your environment for your lack of experience and failures? How typical of a weakling. The handsome man said with a cold smile on his face. There is sufficient spiritual energy in your world for you to break through to Spirit Master. You just can't do it because you aren't capable. Then do you have any advice for me? The strong should help the weak out, right? The handsome man burst out laughing and said, The strong should help the weak? Where did you hear that nonsense? In the cultivation world, you only have yourself. If someone decides to help you, it's mostly for their own benefit or they have some other ulterior motives. You not only lack strength but you also lack common sense. Did the curses really screw with you that much? This is going to be troublesome. The man shook his head in a regretful manner. Forget it. Since you finally remember me, I will help you a little bit. Yuan raised his eyebrows. But I don't remember you? The fact that I am in your dream means you're starting to remember. The handsome man then suddenly snapped his fingers, changing the scenery. Where am I? Yuan looked around his new environment that looked very familiar for some reason, and the handsome man had disappeared. Hey, it's that trash who can't break through to Spirit Master while everyone else has long achieved it, asterisk. And at #carrot. You dare come out again after what happened last week? Are you looking for another beating asterisk? And at hashtag carrot? Someone suddenly shouted, causing Yuan to turn around and look in that direction. A few meters away, Yuan could see a group of young people wearing uniforms that looked very much like disciple uniforms. This looks like a sect. So this is the cultivation world? Why is he showing me this? Yuan wondered to himself. Then he noticed the young man that was standing not far away from this group of disciples. Yuan's eyes widened with surprise when he saw this young man, as this young man had facial features that looked very much like him, and it made Yuan feel like he was watching himself. However, this young man had a cold expression on his face that sent shivers down Yuan's back. He's angry. Ah. What are you going to do asterisk? And at hashtag carrot? Beat us up. Ha ha ha. The group of disciples began laughing. These people were clearly bullies, and that young man whose name he couldn't hear for some reason was their victim. I have had enough of your bullshits. Every time we fight, you all gang up on me. Let's fight one-on-one if you dare. The young man suddenly said in a cold voice. The group stopped laughing after hearing his words, and they exchanged glances with each other before nodding. Good. Then let's fight. However, I will only fight if it's in the life or death arena. One of the disciples stepped forward and spoke with an arrogant look on his face. Life or death? The young man frowned. What? Are you chickening out now? What happened to your brave words a moment ago? The young man sneered coldly and said, Fine. If you want a life or death fight, then you got it. After the young man finished his sentence, the scenery changed again, and Yuan was standing before a large stage that was surrounded by disciples. On the stage was the young man and the disciple that challenged him, both of them with weapons in their hands. Once the match began, they both released their cultivation base. The young man's cultivation was the peak of the spirit warrior, but his opponent was one level above him at the first level spirit master. However, the disparity from that one level was akin to heaven and earth. To think asterisk. And at hashtag carrot would accept a life or death challenge from asterisk hashtag at $%. He's courting death. While the spectators anticipated the young man's death, in the midst of the fierce battle, the young man suddenly had a breakthrough when he was on the verge of losing, entering the spirit master realm. After his breakthrough, the young man instantly turned the tides and killed the other disciple in a gruesome manner. Once the match ended, the scenery changed again and the handsome man returned. What do you think? The handsome man asked with a profound smile on his face. What am I supposed to think? Are you telling me to experience a life or death battle with someone in order to break through? Yuan said to him. You don't get it? Then watch it until you do. The handsome man snapped his fingers again, and Yuan returned to the arena right at the start of the life or death battle, watching them fight all over again. Chapter 502 Desperation. Once, twice, 10 times, Yuan watched the life or death fight between the young man and his opponent countless times. Just what am I looking for? Although Yuan didn't know what he was supposed to be looking at, he eventually just started focusing on the young man that had similar facial features as him. After watching the young man countless times, Yuan noticed something hidden deep within the young man's eyes. There was a certain light, a feeling of desperation, and this feeling only grew stronger the longer he was on the stage. The desperation reached its peak when he was about to be killed. That was when the young man suddenly experienced his breakthrough into Spirit Master. Are you telling me that I am not desperate enough? Yuan spoke out loud. Whoosh. The handsome man returned with a smile on his face. That's precisely why. You are not desperate. If not for your condition, you would have not made it to Spirit Warrior, much less Spirit Master. Your world is quite peaceful compared to the cultivation world. Although there are some conflicts within the world, it usually doesn't affect you. Yuan frowned and said, even if you say that, how am I supposed to become desperate? I can't feel what I don't feel. Then perhaps this will help you. The handsome man waved his sleeves, giving him another scenario. However, it wasn't of the life or death battle. Instead, it was the scene of a family being slaughtered in broad daylight. Yuan's eyes widened with shock as he witnessed a mother and her daughter, alongside thousands of pedestrians getting slaughtered mercilessly in the streets. Although Yuan didn't recognize any of these people, tears began flowing from his eyes when he saw the woman and her daughter getting killed. Mother. Sister. A familiar voice suddenly resounded, causing Yuan to turn around. Standing behind him was the same young man from the life or death battle, but he looked much younger and weaker. This young man was crying just like he was, but there was nothing he could do as he watched the murderer slaughter everyone there until a cultivator finally intervened to stop the madness. Once the killer was apprehended, the young man walked to the corpses of the woman and the little girl. He knelt on the ground with tears still flowing down his face and hugged their lifeless bodies until he was forced to let them go because the people had to clean the bodies off the streets. Once their corpses were taken away, the young man stood up and turned to look at Yuan with a profound feeling of desperation in his gaze. This is my first experience with desperation. When will you experience your first? When your family dies before your eyes. When your loved ones are taken right before your very eyes. Or when you're betrayed by someone you trusted with your life. Yuan frowned and said, I don't want to experience any of that. Of course you don't. Who would want to experience such misfortune? However, you don't get to choose, the weak don't have any choice but to accept their fate. I can see pain in your eyes, but it's not desperation, so I will let you experience some more. The young man turned around and walked away, and the scenery changed once again. This time, the young man had his lover taken right in front of him, but he was too powerless to stop it. Once that scene was over, another scene appeared, then another, and another. Yuan experienced many different situations in his dream, all of them resulting in some sort of misfortune for the young man that increased his desperation for strength. Eventually, the young man was no longer a weak young man but a handsome man with a formidable aura that stood at the peak of the cultivation world. Do you believe in reincarnation? The handsome man suddenly asked Yuan as they returned to the sword graveyard. Reincarnation? As in rebirth? Yuan asked as he wasn't familiar with this term. Yes. In the cultivation world, people believe that you will be reincarnated after death, living a vastly different new life but without the memories of their previous lives, and that will repeat until you damage your soul. I don't know what to say. It's the cultivation world where anything could happen. As ridiculous as reincarnation sounds, I wouldn't be too surprised if it's real. The handsome man smiled and then he started approaching Yuan. Once he stood before Yuan, the handsome man's appearance began turning younger and younger until he resembled the young man that resembled Yuan. You already know the truth deep down inside, don't you? You just don't want to believe it? The young man said to him. I have no idea what you're talking about, Yuan said. Still trying to act dumb? Who do you think you're trying to fool? Me. But that only means you're trying to fool yourself. Yuan turned dead silent as he stared at the young man who resembled him. You wanted to know who I am, right? Do I still need to answer that question? What? Yuan suddenly asked. Why is this happening to me? You should know that answer too. If I tell you everything, it wouldn't be fun, right? Or you actually don't know anything, Yuan said. You're right. I don't. After all, I am you and you don't know anything. However, don't worry because you will eventually remember. The young man's body suddenly started turning into smoke, disappearing into the background. It was at this moment Yuan woke up from his dream, and he could immediately feel 2 streams of tears flowing down his face and the sensation of a wet pillow. Why, young master? Are you okay? Mei Feng, who woke up just a second ago, asked him in a worried voice after seeing his tears. Yes, I am fine. I just had a somewhat bad dream, he said with a bittersweet smile on his face. A nightmare, huh? Mei Feng then wiped his tears with her hands. Chapter 503, Playing the Piano? Miss Mei Feng, have you ever felt desperation? Yuan suddenly asked her after getting off the bed. Desperation? Mei Feng raised her eyebrows, wondering to herself why he would ask such a question. The feeling of being helpless, a sense of weakness and hopelessness. Yuan stood there with a profound aura around him that felt a little different than usual. I can't really say that I have. Mei Feng shook her head. However, the closest I have felt to desperation was when my husband died, I guess. Your husband? Now that he thought about it, Yuan has never seen Meixia's father before. He died in an accident before I could even give birth to Meishio, she said with a bittersweet smile on her face. I'm sorry for asking. There's no need for you to be sorry. It happened really long ago. Mei Feng said with a smile. Anyways, why the sudden question, young master? Does it have something to do with your nightmare? I guess. He nodded. Sometime later, they sat around the living room and began eating breakfast. Wang Xiaoying said that she's currently on the way here with the piano, said Meishio after they sat down. This early in the morning? Yuan chuckled. That just shows how much she wants to listen to your music again, young master, Mei Feng said to him. Even if you say that it's been years since I last touched an instrument, not counting of course, I probably won't even be able to play it properly. You're underestimating yourself, young master. Even if you haven't touched any instruments in years, you'll quickly familiarize yourself with them once you start playing again. I hope so, He nodded. After breakfast, while Meishio cleaned the dishes and Yuan practiced his movement technique, Wang Xiuying arrived at their apartment door with her piano. "Where should I put this?" Wang Xiuying asked. "We have made some space in the living room. You can put it there," Mei Feng said to her. "Okay." The delivery company she hired to deliver the piano then placed the piano at the corner of the living room. Once everything was done, Wang Xiuying immediately urged Yuan to play the piano. "Don't worry, I won't break my promise," Yuan said as he took a seat in front of the piano. "Are you sure you want to give this piano away? It's quite rare and expensive." Mei Feng recognized the piano's value at glance, and she asked Wang Xiuying. "Yes, it is an honor for me to let you Tian play music using my piano. Furthermore, now that I am focused on cultivation, I don't have any time to play it. Instead of letting it rust in my room, I might as well give it to someone who can use it at its full potential." After getting a feel for the smooth keys on the piano, Yuan swiped his fingers across the keyboard, filling the room with beautiful sounds. "This feeling. How long has it been since I last felt it?" Yuan asked himself as he recalled one of his favorite songs. Then, without using divine sense, Yuan began playing the piano almost instinctively. Music quickly filled the place, and when the three ladies heard this heavenly music, their hearts throbbed with excitement. Even though it's been years since Yuan last played the piano, he was currently playing it as though he never took a break. In other words, he was playing it flawlessly. Tears flowed down Wang Xiuying's face as she stared at Yuan's figure that was moving elegantly behind the piano, recalling the first time she first witnessed his performance on the stage. As for Meishio and Mei Feng, they could only silently admire Yuan's talents. "This is it. This is the music that once took over the world. I can't believe that I am actually hearing it again, and it's not being played on a device." Mei Feng recalled Yuan's elegance and grace on the stage as he captivates the audience's heart and soul with his musical talents. A few minutes later, after playing the final note to the song, Yuan asked them, "What do you think? I think I could have played that a lot better." "A lot better?" They all looked at him with raised eyebrows. Mei Feng then said, "I did notice a few delays between notes, but it's almost unrecognizable, and the delay is so minuscule that one wouldn't normally be able to tell the difference if they're not an expert. I guess I am just used to playing it to perfection. Let me try another song." Yuan then began playing a new song, and it somehow sounded even better than the last, something Wang Xiuying didn't think was possible until it happened. After his second song, Yuan continued to play a few more songs, getting better with each song until he eventually reached the perfection that he was used to. Ding. In the midst of Yuan's ninth song, Meishio suddenly received a notification on her phone. She looked at it to see that Yu Rou had texted her. Her eyes widened when she read the contents. "Why Yu Rou is coming here right now," Meishio said to them. Yuan immediately stopped playing the piano and said, "Yu Rou is coming here? What?" "She said that she needed to talk to me. Also, she said that she received her parents' permission." Hearing this, Mei Feng said, "The Yu family probably told Yu Rou to come to convince you to return to the family after the last failure. They're really predictable. What should we do now, young master?" Yuan then pondered for a moment before speaking. "I have been thinking about how I should surprise Yu Rou regarding my recovery." He touched the piano and said, "I think I know how I should surprise her. Can you all help me out?" "Of course," Wang Xiuying quickly said. Meishio and Mei Feng also agreed. "Great." Then he raced the plan. After telling them his plan to surprise Yu Rou, Yuan returned to his bedroom and patiently waited for Yu Rou to arrive. Half an hour later, someone knocked on their door. "It's me." Yu Rou's voice then resounded. As they had expected, it was Yu Rou. However, Yu Rou was completely unaware of the surprise that was in store for her. Chapter 504, Surprising Yu Rou. "Good morning, Meishio." Yu Rou greeted when she opened the door. "Good morning, Yu Rou." Meishio returned the greeting. "Please come inside." Once Yu Rou entered their apartment, she immediately noticed Mei Feng and Wang Xiuying sitting in the living room. "Ah, Miss Mei Feng? Wang Xiuying? What are you two doing here so early in the morning?" Yu Rou asked them with a surprised look on her face. "I'm on vacation, so I figured that I should visit the young master," Mei Feng said with a calm look on her face. "I am here to check up on Yu Tian's condition," said Wang Xiuying. Although she wasn't sure why, Yu Rou felt that something was amiss from the atmosphere in the place. "I see. Where's my brother? I'd like to see him before I talk, though I'm sure you can already guess why I am here." "The young master is currently in his room," Mei Feng said. Yu Rou nodded and approached his room, but then she noticed the beautiful piano sitting at the corner of the room and stopped to look at it. Wow! What is this piano doing here? It wasn't here when I last came here. As a piano player herself, Yu Rou could instantly tell that the piano was a valuable one. That piano is mine. At least it was until I gave it to you, Tian, said Wang Xiaoying. Ah, it's yours? But why? Yu Rou asked. I have no use for it anymore and I'd rather give it to my idol than sell it. Yu Rou found it strange that she would give it to Yuan when he can't even use it, and in her eyes, it was quite disrespectful to give an instrument to Yuan while knowing his background and condition. It was almost like giving a blind man a book that he cannot read. Though Yu Rou didn't think too much of it for now. Brother, it's Yu Rou. I am here to visit you, she said to him after knocking on the doors. Come inside, Yuan said. Yu Rou then entered the room and sat beside the bed. Even though we have been playing together and for a while, it still feels like forever since I last saw you. Yu Rou gently caressed his silky black hair to the side so she could get a good look at his handsome face. I'm sorry, brother. Why are you suddenly apologizing? Yuan asked her. Because of the Yu family, both you and Meishio have been experiencing unpleasant situations. I wish I could help, but I am powerless within the family. There's no need for you to apologize, Yu Rou. If anything, it should be the ones responsible that need to apologize. This means the chairman of the Cultivators Association and our parents. After a moment of silence, Yu Rou spoke. Brother, I am thinking about leaving the family and joining a faction. Why would you do that? Yuan was taken by surprise by her sudden reveal. Now that cultivation is widespread and the new trend, I want to take advantage of it, especially since I am currently ahead of many people. If I remain in the Yu family, I will forever remain powerless. However, if I leave, I will at least have a chance to become an influential person without the help of my family. It's not going to be easy, but I hope to become stronger than the Yu family. Yuan was speechless after listening to Yu Rou's plans. However, he didn't immediately dismiss it and he asked, Where will you go? I don't know right now, but I can tell you where I want go, the Cultivators Association. They're just a bunch of bullies and I refuse to lend them my assistance. I already have a heaven-grade cultivation technique thanks to my family, so I don't really care where I go as long as they're good people with enough influence to not be bullied by the Yu family. I see. When you decide, let me know, okay? Of course. Anyways, I am here today because my parents wanted me to convince Meishio to return to the family so that they could hand her over to the Cultivators Association. I agreed since it meant that I would get to see you and Meishio again, but I won't be doing any convincing. I'm sorry to get you wrapped up in this mess as well. But don't worry, I will handle everything soon. You will? What are you going to do? Yu Rou couldn't help but ask. It's a secret for now, he said with a mysterious smile. I hope it's not anything dangerous. Yu Rou said with a worried frown. It won't be. Yuan chuckled. Sometime later Yuan said, Yu Rou, you saw the piano, right? Why don't you let Meishio play you a song? Meishio knows how to play the piano? Since when? She's been practicing lately, you see. If you say so. Yu Rou then went back outside and said, Meishio, my brother said you'll play a song for me? Meishio nodded, but you'll have to wear this. Yu Rou looked at the object in Meixia's hand. It was a blindfold. Why do I have to be blindfolded? I won't be able to see your performance that way. I want you to judge it using your ears, not eyes, Meishio then said. I guess so. Once Yu Rou took a seat on the couch, Meishio blindfolded her. A few moments later, Yu Rou could hear the piano being played. Wow, Meishio is really good with the piano. How long has she been practicing to reach this level? Yu Rou wasn't suspicious at first, but once she listened a little longer, she noticed something was off, and the feeling she got earlier grew more obvious. This can't be Meishio playing the piano. It's too good. Even I cannot play this perfectly with many years of practice. Unless Meishio has talent similar to my brother, there's no way she learned the piano and reached this level in such a short amount of time. Although she didn't want to discredit Meishio or her talents, it was simply too hard to believe. It hasn't been long since Meishio left the Yu family, and even if she started playing the day she left, it wasn't realistic for Meishio to reach this level of performance in such a short time unless she was Yuan himself. Maybe this is Miss Meifeng playing the piano and they wanted to play a trick on me. Yu Rou began having this thought. Midway through the song, someone suddenly removed her blindfold, causing it to fall onto her lap. Yu Rou subconsciously opened her eyes when she felt the blindfold fall off, and to her absolute shock, it wasn't Meishio sitting in front of the piano, nor was it Meifeng like she had thought. It was actually Yuan sitting before the piano. And he was playing with elegance and grace. Be brother? Yu Rou stood up from the shock, and she stared at Yuan's moving figure with a look of disbelief on her face. However, she didn't say anything else and silently watched Yuan play the piano with a seemingly healthy and normal body, feeling as though she was in a dream. Chapter 505, His Own Company. After playing the last note to the song, Yuan lifted his hands from the piano keyboard in an elegant manner before turning to face the shocked Yu Rou with a smile on his face. What do you think? I may not be as good as I used to be, but I hope you enjoyed it. Hearing his words, Yu Rou's eyes finally started flowing with tears, and because Shed held it in for so long, it came gushing forward like a broken dam, immediately blocking her vision. Brother, you're so cruel, Yu Rou said in a crying voice, dumbfounding him. And she continued, how can you make me cry in front of so many people? Yu Rou then wiped her tears and said, how come you can move again? And since when? Yuan then explained to her that he has no clue why it happened. I woke up like this and it has only been like 2 days since my recovery. It's only been 2 days? And your recovery happened out of the blue? What kind of miracle is this? Yu Rou was left speechless by his words. Thousands of doctors around the world couldn't figure out what was going on with Yuan's condition, and he somehow heals naturally? That seemed too good to be true. However, there was no reason for Yuan to lie to her. Yuan suddenly approached Yu Rou and wiped the tears from her face. To tell you the truth, my recovery actually started even before I left the Yu family, but I was only able to lift a finger at that time, and I didn't want to get your hopes up, so I decided to wait until I could stand on my own before letting you know. Unbelievable, Yu Rou muttered in a low voice. After a moment of silence, she said, this changes everything, brother. Now that you have recovered, there are so many things you can do. What do you plan on doing now that you have recovered? I am going to focus on rehabilitation for now. Once I am confident with my movements, I am going to visit the Cultivators Association. However, I am not sure what I want to do after that. Do you intend on going back to the stage? Yu Rou asked the question that has been asked multiple times now. No, I do not. Yuan shook his head. Yu Rou sighed and said, I figured. But you should reconsider since it's such a waste of your talents. Brother, you never truly reached the peak of the musical world since you were forced to leave it due to your condition, and it has always been a dream of mine to see you on the stage again. Furthermore, you can get back at the Yu family for abandoning you. If you return to the stage, they will definitely regret disowning you. In fact, they might even try to get you back into the family. Huh? Yuan didn't immediately refuse and began pondering. Getting back at the Yu family, huh? I definitely want to see their faces filled with regret. However, I shouldn't be doing this for revenge. Instead, I should be doing this for Yu Rou, who has been there for me since the beginning. If Yu Rou wants me to return to the stage, although he has already decided to never return to the professional stage, he also told himself that he would do anything to make Yu Rou happy, and if him returning to the stage will make her happy, he cannot simply ignore it. Brother, if you don't want to return to the stage, I won't force you. Yu Rou said to him as she could guess what he was thinking. It was at this moment Mei Feng spoke. Young master, if I may make a suggestion, you don't need to go onto the stage as Yu Tian. You can simply do it under a different alias. After all, it's not the stage you hate, but your name that is affiliated with the Yu family, am I right? I have listened closely to all of your performances today, and I can tell that you still enjoy playing the instrument. You're afraid that if you go onto the stage that you'll once again give credit to the Yu family. If I am wrong, please correct me. Yuan remained silent for a moment before speaking. I have known that I still love to play the instrument when I played the zither inside Cultivation Online. I think you're right, Miss Mei Feng. It's not the stage that I don't like, I just don't want to feel like I am being used by the Yu family again. Brother. Yu Rou felt incredibly guilty at this moment as she was part of the Yu family that made Yuan feel so much pain and grief. Well, there are many things you can do to avoid that feeling, such as playing for another company. Or even better, you can make your own company so that you won't be playing for anyone but yourself. Making my own company? As much as I like the sound of that, I'm only 18 years old. How am I supposed to make a company? Mei Feng lifted her hand and pointed it at herself. You don't need to do anything, young master. I can make the company for you. Really? But aren't you already incredibly busy at the Yu family? I don't dare to make you work even more than you already are. Yuan said. It's really not that much work. Although I will be making the company, I won't actually need to do anything, and when I do, I can do it from anywhere in the world as long as I have access to a phone and the internet. Furthermore, you can hire other people to deal with the stuff. In fact, Meishio has some experience when it comes to these kinds of things since this is what we mainly do for the Yu family. Mei Feng then turned to look at Meishio and continued, I will make the company and you'll do everything else. Since it's just a company in name, you don't actually have to do much besides organizing events for the young master. You should be able to do at least that with your training. If you need help, I will step in. What do you think? Chapter 506, Divine Melody. I don't mind as long as Tian agrees, Meishio said in a calm voice after hearing Mei Feng's suggestion. Besides maid training and defensive training, Meishio also learned management since she was expected to help Yuan with his work in the future just like how Mei Feng helps the Yu family. It's all up to you now, young master. As long as you give me a nod, I will make the company. Yuan didn't immediately respond and took a couple of minutes to think about everything. Although he didn't care about getting revenge on the Yu family for what they have done to him, he definitely would like to see their faces once they learn that he has recovered and started playing on the stage again. Furthermore, he will be making Yu Rou happy by doing so. Sometime later, Yuan nodded and said, I will leave everything to you, Miss Mei Feng. Great. Now I just need the name of the company and what your new alias will be. Mei Feng said, her voice filled with enthusiasm, as this could be the start of a new legend. Company name, huh? Do you guys have any suggestions? Yuan asked the ladies in the room. How about Divine Melody? Your music is always divine sounding after all. Wang Xiuying was the first to give a suggestion. Divine Melody, huh? I also quite like it. Yu Rou agreed. Well, if you both like it, I guess we'll go with Divine Melody. As for my new alias, Yuan pondered for a moment before speaking, Tianyang shall be my new alias. Okay. I will make a few phone calls with a few friends and I should have the company ready by tonight. Mei Feng said as she pulled out her phone and walked outside the apartment. I cannot wait. This is so exciting. Yu Rou spoke with her body trembling from excitement. I can already imagine my parents trying to recruit you once they learn of your existence. I am also shaking from excitement. Wang Xiuying agreed. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Yuan said, and he continued, I may be under a new alias, but if I go outside in my current appearance, they will learn my real identity in a heartbeat. I will need a disguise. How about wearing a mask like you do in? Meishio suggested. Yes, I was thinking the same thing, he agreed. Meishio went to grab her laptop and started looking for a mask. Which one do you like? Meishio asked him. Yuan then pointed to the black mask that somewhat resembled the one in. I like this one, he said. Yu Rou raised her eyebrows when she saw this and she asked, Brother? How do you see with your eyes closed? Chem? Oh, I am using divine sense to see. My sight hasn't healed yet. Divine sense. You can also use that in the real world. Yu Rou was shocked. Yes. He nodded. Now I'm really curious what else can be used in the real world besides cultivation techniques and divine sense. Yu Rou mumbled. Well, for one, other techniques besides cultivation techniques also work, Yuan said. Huh. Have you succeeded in learning a martial technique? Yu Rou asked him as she had this feeling. Yes, I have. I'm now trying to learn a movement technique. Can I see the technique you learned? Yu Rou quickly asked. Sure. Yuan then used his divine sense to look for a knife. Once he found it, he made it fly towards them from the kitchen. This is your flying dagger technique. Yu Rou recognized this technique since she has seen him use it a couple of times during their questing. That's right. Yuan nodded. Heavens, that looks incredibly dangerous. Wang Xiuying mumbled as she watched the kitchen knife circle around Yuan's body. Should I start trying to learn Wind Blade? Yu Rou wondered to herself out loud. That sounds even more dangerous. Yuan said as he could somehow imagine Yu Rou causing mass destruction with wind blades. I have ordered the mask. It should arrive within the next 3 days. Meishio said a moment later. Sometime later, Mei Feng returned and said, I have the company set up. I will be the owner of the company in name, but I will leave everything to you, Meishio. Once you settle your situation with the Cultivators Association and decide to reveal your identity, I will transfer the company to you. And in case you need some refreshments, I will send you the training notes from years prior. I understand. Meishio nodded. As for the young master, you just need to schedule a performance and start making a name for yourself again. I suggest you do a couple of public performances to gain popularity before you return to the stage. Okay. And for the rest of the day, Yuan would play the piano for the ladies in the apartment. During breaks, they would talk about their new company and plan for their future. At the end of the day, Yu Rou said, I would love to stay here for longer, but it's about time I return home and report to my parents that I have failed to convince Meishio to return to the family. I expect a scolding, but it is what it is. I'm sorry, Yu Rou. This is all because of me. Don't blame yourself for this situation, Meishio. We all know who's in the wrong here. Yu Rou patted her back. Yu Rou, before you leave. Yuan approached her with his arms spread, his intentions clear. Seeing this, Yu Rou immediately jumped into his embrace and hugged him tightly. I have been waiting for this for the entire day, you idiot. Yu Rou said, feeling her eyes tear up again. I'm sorry for making you wait so long. Once they were satisfied, Yuan let her go and Yu Rou made her way back to the Yu family. I'm also going to leave as well. It's been a fun day. I will be coming here often to hear your music, Yu Tian. Wang Xiuying said shortly after Yu Rou left. Yuan nodded and said, once again thank you for the piano. I will treasure it. That means more than you think to me. Wang Xiuying said with a bright smile on her face. Chapter 507. Breaking his bottleneck. After Wang Xiuying left, Meishio began cooking dinner while Mei Feng looked over some documents for their newly created company. Young master, you'll need a disguise for your new alias, Mei Feng said to him, unaware that they already have something planned. Yes, I know. I will be wearing a mask when I play on the stage, he said. A mask, huh? That's not a bad idea. Mei Feng agreed. Sometime later after dinner, Yuan went to take a shower. Now that he can clean himself, he plans on doing so every single day. Once it was time for sleep, Mei Feng and Yuan retired to their room while Meishio returned to her own room. Miss Mei Feng, I have a question. Yuan suddenly asked her as they laid in the same bed. What is it? Do you know where I can obtain a sword? A sword? Like a real sword? Why do you want one? Self-defense, I guess. Self-defense? Mei Feng looked at him with raised eyebrows. What kind of self-defense requires a sword? You see, the world is getting more dangerous lately with more and more people becoming cultivators, obtaining inhuman strength that's only possible in the cultivation world, but our world is very small compared to the world in, and I was worried about what might happen in the future, so I want to prepare myself. Cultivators may be strong, but I don't think we have to be that worried. It's not as though the world will suddenly become a lawless place. But since the young masters want a sword, I will try to do something about it. Thank you. Mei Feng fell asleep shortly afterward. However, Yuan didn't go to sleep. Instead, he silently got out of the bed and went to the living room before taking a seat on the floor. This will be my first time cultivating in this position. Yuan thought to himself as he started to absorb the spiritual energy in the air. Desperation. I'm not desperate enough to reach Spirit Master? He recalled what the handsome man told him in his dreams. Yuan then remembered the scenes where the mother and her daughter were murdered in broad daylight. Then he recalled the betrayal of a friend. Then of the young man's lover being forcefully taken away. After remembering these situations, Yuan subconsciously started replacing these individuals with people he knew. He imagined Mei Feng and Yu Rou getting killed before his eyes. He imagined being betrayed by Dr. Wang and Wang Xiuying. He imagined the Cultivators Association successfully taking Meishio away from him by force. You're so weak. How can you protect anyone like that? The handsome man's voice suddenly resounded in his head. Yuan gritted his teeth, and somewhere within his consciousness, an invisible flame created by desperation appeared. The spiritual energy in the area began flying towards Yuan at an incredibly fast rate. That's right. If you want to protect those you care about, you must be strong. Obtain the strength to protect your family and friends. Obtain the power to defeat those who wish to covet from you. Be desperate. Desperate for power. The handsome man's voice continued to resound inside Yuan's head as he subconsciously cultivated, and before he was aware, he entered a trance-like state, had entered enlightenment. Meishio, who was just about to fall asleep, noticed the sudden change in the atmosphere. She got out of the bed and looked peeked outside her room, and to her surprise, there was a figure sitting in the living room with his long black hair fluttering behind him like a cape before a gust of wind. Yuan? Meishio mumbled to herself. Even though she was clearly looking at Yuan, for some reason, it felt like she wasn't looking at Yuan at the same time, almost like she was looking at someone else and the Yuan there was merely an illusion. Meanwhile, Yuan's cultivation that had been stuck at peak spirit warrior finally began to move. His dantian that contained all of his spiritual energy began to tremble, and it slowly began expanding in size. Then, the golden symbol within his body that had turned into veins attached itself to the dantian, turning it golden. Yuan's body was currently emitting a faint golden glow, and Meishio was there to witness it, feeling as though she was before a divine being. Meishiu didn't want to disturb him, so she went back inside her room and returned to the bed, trying her best to fall asleep. The following morning, Yuan stood up from the floor with a profound feeling in his body. He was no longer a spirit warrior, and his body emitted the feeling of a spirit master. So this is what it feels like to be a spirit master in this world? Yuan took a deep breath, sucking in a large amount of spiritual energy. Good morning, Meishiu. Yuan suddenly noticed her presence and said to her, "Did you break through to Spirit Master? You feel a little different compared to yesterday." Meishiu asked him. "Yes, I have managed to break through my bottleneck." He nodded. "How do you feel?" "My divine sense is much stronger now and I can keep it active for a lot longer. I haven't tried using flying daggers, but it should be easier to control the technique now," he said. He then tried to use flying daggers, and to his surprise he was able to control 3 kitchen knives at once with relative ease when he could barely control 2 before. Wow. The difference between Spirit Warrior and Spirit Master is so much even though it was only a single level. Yuan was surprised by the results. "Congratulations on reaching Spirit Master." Yuan nodded. "Yes, now I can finally visit the Cultivators Association." "You're really going to do it?" Meishiu asked in a worried voice. He smiled and said, "How else am I going to stop them from taking you away from me?" Meishiu blushed at his words. "I am going to prepare breakfast," she said, making a quick escape. Chapter 508, I Will Come With You. "Good morning, young master. You're up earlier than usual today," Meifeng said to him after coming out of his room. "I actually spent the night cultivating," he said with a smile. "I see." After eating breakfast, Yuan would spend about 2 hours just playing the piano without any rest. Afterward he would continue practicing the movement technique. Meanwhile, Yu Rou stood before her parents. "How did it go?" Yu Yong asked her. "It failed. Meishiu refused to return even when I asked," Yu Rou said. Tang Li sneered in disgust. Meishiu appeared to be enjoying her current life with Yu Tian. "I think it'd be for the better if we didn't disturb their new life," Yu Rou said. "I have a feeling that you didn't even bother to convince her. Tell me, Yu Rou, what exactly did you do yesterday when you spent an entire day at their place?" Yu Yong asked her in a solemn voice. "I tried to convince Meishiu to return to the family, but when it failed, I remained there to hang out with them since it's been a while," Yu Rou said in a casual voice. And before her parents could speak, she continued, "I don't know why you want Meishiu back so desperately, but even if she used to serve me, remember that Meishiu was trained to serve Yu Tian. My brother was the reason that Meishiu even wanted to be a maid in the first place, so if you're thinking about tearing them apart, it won't happen. And you're still forbidden to contact that trash since you didn't get any satisfactory results," Tang Li said to her. Yu Rou frowned, but she didn't say anything and left the place. "Looks like we'll have to rely on the mercenaries. Chairman Zhao has been getting more impatient as well." Yu Yong sighed. He then retrieved his cell phone to give Mr. Johnson a call. 3 days passed by in a flash, and someone knocked on Yuan's apartment early in the morning. "Delivery." Meishiu went to open the door since she was expecting this package. "Thank you." After accepting the package, Meishiu went to the living room and called out to Yuan, "Yu Tian, your masks have arrived." A few moments later, Yuan came out of the bathroom. "Great. Let's see what we have." After opening the package, Yuan could see over a dozen different masks in the package. "Did they give us more than we ordered by accident? I don't remember picking most of these," Yuan said. "Oh, I forgot to mention it, but I decided to buy a few more afterward just in case we needed it. I even picked a new design for some of them if you ever get bored of one," Meishiu said. "I see, that makes sense. Thanks." Yuan picked one randomly and wore it on his face. "What do you think?" he asked them. "You give off a mysterious feeling." "I like it, young master." Mei Feng gave her opinion. "I think it looks good too." Meishiu nodded calmly as she was already used to seeing him wear masks in. "Great. Then I will be wearing one of these while I visit the Cultivators Association tomorrow." "You're really planning on going there?" "It's going to be dangerous," Mei Feng said. "If I don't go, they will continue messing with Meishiu and I am not going to sit around and let it happen. Now that I am no longer useless, I am going to do something useful with my body for once," Yuan said with a stern look on his face. After a moment of silence, Mei Feng said, "If you're going, then I will go with you." "You will? But won't you cause trouble for the Yu family?" Yuan said. Mei Feng then picked up one of the available masks and wore it on her face. "I won't cause any trouble if they don't know who I am," she chuckled. Furthermore, you'll need some backup just in case anything happens. What about, you stay here? Mei Feng interrupted Mei Xiao before she could even finish speaking. Don't worry, I will be more than enough to guarantee the young master's safety. I understand, Mei Xiao said, clearly discontent with the results, but she didn't want to argue with her mother, and since she's wanted by the Cultivators Association, it would be better if she didn't go to their main headquarters. That night, Yuan went to sleep to make sure he was in top condition for tomorrow. Looks like you're finally going to do something about the situation. The handsome man appeared in his dreams again. You again? Yuan sighed. Ever since Head started walking, he would have to deal with this handsome man who's supposedly him before his reincarnation every time he went to sleep. Why are you not happy to see me? This means that you're slowly recovering your memories. What if I don't want these memories? Yuan said with a frown. You don't want to remember? Even though it'll make you stronger? Are you afraid that you might become a different person once you remember everything? The handsome man asked Yuan even though he already knew the answer. Everybody will change if given enough time. This is not something you can prevent no matter how powerful you are. However, you are in control of what kind of person you want to be, so why are you afraid? I am not afraid, Yuan said in a calm voice. And he continued, I just don't want to experience unnecessary emotions that I felt before. What happened in the past happened in the past. I don't need to know about it. The handsome man smiled and said, if you don't care about what happened in the past, you wouldn't exist right now. What do you mean by that? Yuan frowned slightly. You exist for a reason, reincarnated for a reason. You may not understand it now, but you will eventually remember everything and understand your reason for existing. The handsome man then looked towards the sky and said, it's about time for you to wake up. I look forward to what you're going to do today. Perhaps you've already started changing, you just don't realize it. After that sentence ended, Yuan woke up from his sleep. Chapter 509, I am here to speak with your chairman. Good morning, Mei Xiao. Yuan greeted her, who was already preparing breakfast. Morning. Once breakfast was prepared, they sat around the dining table until all of the plates were empty. Once we deal with the Cultivators Association, let's go out and eat at a restaurant, Mei Xiao, Yuan said to her afterward. Okay. Although it was quite sudden, Mei Xiao agreed regardless. After breakfast, Yuan changed into a new set of clothes and grabbed his mask. Are you ready, Miss Mei Feng? Yuan asked her, who was right behind him. Wait a second, young master, Mei Feng said. And she continued, the Yu family was able to find your location because they'd somehow managed to acquire footage of you and Mei Xiao on the public surveillance cameras, so I would advise you to take a different route, one that is hidden from these cameras. How am I supposed to know where to go? Yuan raised his eyebrows. Don't worry, I have already found a route from this place to the Cultivators Association that will allow us to travel without being seen. You just need to follow me. Okay, I will leave everything to you. I want to save my spiritual energy for when I reach the Cultivators Association, so can I hold your hands until then? Yuan then asked her. Since he needed spiritual energy for divine sense, it would be wiser to save his spiritual energy until he needed it. And even though he can use his divine sense for much longer now that he's a spirit master, it still wasn't enough for him to keep it activated for long periods at a time. Of course you can. Mei Feng held her hands out with a smile on her beautiful face. Yuan then wore his mask before grabbing her soft hands. Mei Feng also wore her mask before leading Yuan outside the door and into the streets, following the route Mei Feng had prepared in advance to avoid being seen. It will take us a little longer to reach the Cultivators Association since we're taking this unique route. Since we have some time, can you tell me what you intend on doing there so I can prepare for it? Mei Feng asked him as they walked hand in hand. I am going there to intimidate them, he responded in a calm voice. Excuse me? Mei Feng turned to look at him with her eyes filled with shock. You're going to intimidate the Cultivators Association? One of the most powerful factions in the entire world right now? You know even the Yu family don't dare to offend them, right? She said to him in a dazed voice. Yes, I know, Yuan responded in a calm voice. Then how are you going to intimidate them? If words won't get through them, I can only use force, right? Yuan said. A force? Mei Feng had a bad feeling about this and she started regretting agreeing to this farce. Don't worry, I am confident in my strength. I am not worried about that. But if you act violently at the Cultivators Association, you will get arrested. The Cultivators Association is not only a powerful force, but they are also something like the police for cultivators since normal police won't be able to deal with cultivators and their incredible strength. Simply, you'll go to jail that is specifically made for cultivators. I won't do anything violent, if I don't have to. Mei Feng sighed and mumbled to herself, looks like I might have to call some lawyers after this all goes down. Mei Feng wasn't too worried that Yuan might go to jail for causing a scene in the Cultivators Association as long as he doesn't kill anyone, as she has connections with many powerful and reliable lawyers who can get someone out of anything as long as they had enough money. About an hour later, they arrive at the Cultivators Association. We're here, young master. Please, just don't do anything too crazy. Mei Feng pleaded. Yuan didn't say anything and merely nodded. He then stood there for a minute to prepare himself. Once he was ready, he released Mei Feng's hand and began walking towards the Cultivators Association, and Mei Feng followed him from behind. Their unique appearance quickly attracted everyone's attention, and they wondered why Yuan and Mei Feng were wearing masks. There was a line to the reception, but Yuan ignored the line and walked straight to the front. The line is back there. The woman working at the reception pointed to the back of the line. I am here to speak with your chairman. Take me to him. I'm sorry, but who are you? I will only speak with the chairman. I'm afraid that's not possible. Until we know your identity, you won't see anyone. Furthermore, Chairman Zhao is currently busy in a meeting, so he won't have time for you. Bang! Yuan suddenly slammed the desk with his fist, instantly destroying it. This startled the woman and everyone there greatly, including Mei Feng, who felt like she was suddenly before a different person. I will not repeat myself, Yuan said in a calm voice that had a hint of anger within. The woman looked at the destroyed desk with her eyes wide with shock, as the desk was made out of metal and not something an ordinary cultivator could achieve. A few moments later, once the guards there snapped out of their daze, they quickly surrounded Yuan and Mei Feng. Who the hell do you think you are? How dare you cause such a scene at the Cultivators Association? The head of the security there shouted at Yuan. Of course they were all cultivators. Yuan slowly turned his head to look at the middle-aged man who was at the 6th level spirit apprentice. If you bring me to your chairman, there will no longer be a scene, he then said. The audacity. Apprehend them. The middle-aged man commanded the dozen of cultivators around him. However, before they could even get close, Yuan released his spirit master cultivation base, instantly halting these spirit apprentices with intense pressure. Although none of them could comprehend what they were feeling since they had never seen a spirit master before, they instinctively knew to stay away from Yuan or their lives would be in danger. Chapter 510, The Presence of a Spirit Master. Baitum. 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 The cultivators around Yuan could feel their hearts being squeezed by this invisible pressure the longer they remained around him, so they all took steps back, fearing that their hearts might be crushed if they continued going forward. Who are you? Why do you want to speak with the chairman? If you do anything funny, the entire Cultivators Association will be upon you. The head guard pointed at Yuan and shouted. After a moment of silence, Yuan spoke. Yuan, tell your chairman that Yuan is here to see him. Why Yuan? You don't tell me that you're that Yuan from? The head guard was left speechless by this revelation. The others were also shocked by player Yuan's sudden appearance. As far as they were aware, the real player Yuan has never appeared in public before, and judging by his appearance and unfathomable presence, there was a good chance that this masked figure before them was truly player Yuan, the #1 mysterious player in. Meanwhile, somewhere on the top floor of the Cultivators Association, a decently sized group of individuals with ages ranging from old to young sat around a large conference table with Chairman Zhao sitting at the end, and all of them were emitting a profound aura. If your exalted families join our Cultivators Association that is currently the #1 force in the world, it will permanently stabilize our position in the world, and your families will definitely be compensated greatly for it. Chairman Zhao said to these individuals. However, before any of these people could even respond, they felt an unfathomable pressure appearing right beneath them, shocking them greatly. Heavens! What was that? Who is releasing this pressure? This pressure. It's the presence of a spirit master. Impossible. The old people there stood up from shock after feeling the pressure. What? Did you just say spirit master? Is that even possible? Chairman Zhao exclaimed in a dumbfounded voice. His phone began ringing the very next moment. What happened? Don't you know that I am currently in a meeting with the Grand Families? See Chairman Zhao. I deeply apologize for disturbing your meeting with the seniors, but we have an emergency. Someone claiming to be Yuan is here to see you, and he's causing a commotion. Yuan? Why does that name sound so familiar? Chairman Zhao muttered out loud, causing everyone there to look at him. Then he came to a realization. Why Yuan? That player Yuan from? Is it really him? Chairman Zhao shouted at the phone. I think so. He's even wearing a mask to conceal his identity. I think he's real. Tell him to stay put. I will be there in a moment. Chairman Zhao closed the connection and turned to look at the people there with an apologetic smile. I'm coming with you. I would like to see if this person is really that famous player Yuan. One of the old men there spoke. I'm also curious. Eventually, everyone in the room agreed to follow Chairman Zhao. Is it really player Yuan? Why would he show up so suddenly? And what business does he have with me? Chairman Zhao wondered to himself as he walked to the elevators with the others, as he doesn't recall having any contact with Yuan before. Sometime later, they arrived downstairs, and they could see two individuals wearing a mask being surrounded by many people there. Are you really player Yuan? One of the people gathered around them asked. However, Yuan ignored him and continued to stand there in silence. The old people following Chairman Zhao took a deep breath as they approached the masked man who was emitting a profound pressure. Spirit Master. He's really a Spirit Master. They were quite shocked to see an unknown Spirit Master. Make way. The chairman is here. The head guard shouted at the people there. A path quickly opened up, allowing Chairman Zhao to approach Yuan, but he didn't get too close as he had a bad feeling about this situation. Are you really player Yuan? Why do you want to speak with me? Yuan didn't say anything at first and started slowly walking towards Chairman Zhao until he was standing right before him. I am here to give you a warning today. If you dare try to lay a finger on Meishio again, I will destroy the entire Cultivators Association. Yuan spoke in a grim voice with his pressure growing stronger and stronger. Chairman Zhao could feel an invisible hand crushing his heart from the pressure, but he gritted his teeth and endured it. Meishio? How are you related to her? Chairman Zhao asked him with a deep frown as he was having trouble breathing, and he could have never imagined that player Yuan would show up here for Meishio. Our relationship doesn't concern you, nor should you stick your nose into our business. The only thing you need to know is that if you dare to bother Meishio again, I will bring the Cultivators Association to the ground. Before Chairman Zhao could even respond, Yuan suddenly moved his arm and grabbed Chairman Zhao's neck, lifting him into the air. See Chairman. The guards there subconsciously reacted, but they were stopped by the old people that were following Chairman Zhao. If you don't want the chairman to die, you should stay still, said an old man with long white hair tied into a ponytail. Meanwhile, Yuan spoke in a low voice while staring at Chairman Zhao. I am not asking you, I am telling you to leave her alone. Do you understand me? Why? I understand. Chairman Zhao uttered with much effort. Yuan tossed Chairman Zhao to the side like trash after hearing his response. He then turned around and said to Meifeng, let's go. However, before he could walk very far, one of the old people there called out to him in a respectful voice, please wait a moment, young man. Yuan stopped and turned around to see an old man standing behind him with his hands clasped together. Chapter 511, Chairman Zhao's Resignation. What is it? Yuan asked the old man. I am surnamed Wu and I would like to confirm something. Are you really a Spirit Master? The old man asked him. What do you think? The old man showed a slight smile on his face before releasing his cultivation base, and to Yuan's surprise, he was also a Spirit Master. There are already other Spirit Masters beside me in this world? Yuan thought to himself. Although I cannot see your face, I can tell that you're surprised by my cultivation base. You must be wondering how this is possible. If you visit my family at Mount Wu, I will tell you everything. And before Yuan could even respond, the old man continued, don't worry, I am not related to Chairman Zhao, so whatever happened between you and him has nothing to do with me or my family. I came here today to see if the Cultivators Association was worth my family's backing, but from the looks of it, we will have to reconsider some things. Hey old Wu, let's not try to pull a fast one before everyone here, or have you forgotten about our presence? Another old man suddenly stepped forward and bowed to Yuan with his hands clasped. My surname is Ji, and I am also a Spirit Master. The old man surnamed Ji then released his Spirit Master cultivation base, surprising Yuan even more. Forget about Mount Wu. Come to my Mount Ji instead. You won't regret it. Then another person stepped forward, an old woman. Instead of fighting amongst ourselves, why don't we all cooperate together? The old woman suggested. She approached Yuan and said, surnamed Wang from the Wang family. If you want to know how we reach Spirit Master and more about cultivation in general, come to the Jaded Garden situated outside the Yang City. We'll be more than happy to befriend a young genius such as yourself. If you're worried about your identity being revealed, I will let you know that we're really good at keeping secrets. The old woman then leaned over his shoulders and whispered in a low voice that could only be heard by Yuan. After all, we have managed to keep cultivation a secret from the rest of the world for many centuries. Yuan's body trembled after hearing the old woman's words. They kept cultivation a secret from the rest of the world for many centuries? Does this mean that they have known about cultivation even way before existed? So, that explains why they were spirit masters. See you there in a month. The old woman said to him before turning around and walking back to Chairman Zhao. Chairman Zhao, you have a lot of explaining to do for us. And don't you even dare think about lying to us because we will investigate the truth ourselves afterward. Chairman Zhao, who was supposed to be an almighty figure, nodded his head in a powerless manner before the old woman and the other elders that were clearly more influential than Chairman Zhao. Yuan lingered in the place for a few more moments before finally leaving the Cultivators Association with Mei Feng. Although the people there wanted to follow him, they didn't dare to do so and reluctantly stayed behind. Young master, you nearly scared me to death just now. I'm shocked that we even got to leave that place in one piece. Mei Feng sighed some time later. I'm sorry. I got a little angry and my body started moving on its own. Yuan said to her, his hands still trembling a little. Young master, are you really player Yuan? Mei Feng suddenly asked him. I will tell you everything once we return home, okay? Of course. Mei Feng nodded. Once Yuan and Mei Feng left the scene, the elders pressed Chairman Zhao for answers before everyone in the Cultivators Association. If you don't tell us what happened, we'll speak with the council and have them deal with you. Chairman Zhao sighed out loud before telling them the truth in a regretful voice. What a shameless old man. Someone there said out loud after Chairman Zhao revealed everything. Chairman Zhao, I am greatly disappointed in you. My Wang family no longer wishes to be affiliated with the Cultivators Association. Excuse me. The old woman turned around and left the scene, followed by a few youngsters that came to this place with her. The other elders also told Chairman Zhao the same thing before leaving the place. As for the other people in the Cultivators Association, they immediately started spreading news of everything that transpired there today through their phones, which spread like wildfire, shocking the world. What? The real player Yuan showed up at the Cultivators Association to warn Chairman Zhao? What did Chairman Zhao do to offend player Yuan? Chairman Zhao tried to force a young lady into joining the Cultivators Association? And this young lady turned out to have a relationship with player Yuan? Talk about karma. Ah. Serves that old pervert right. I can't believe it. This is player Yuan's first real appearance outside of Cultivation Online. Player Yuan is already a spirit master? Isn't he also a spirit master in Cultivation Online? Just who is player Yuan? How does he keep achieving these seemingly impossible achievements? The world was greatly shocked by what had happened at the Cultivators Association, but the people were more interested in player Yuan than what Chairman Zhao had done. As for the Yu family, they had managed to dodge a bullet when Chairman Zhao revealed everything, as he wasn't aware that the Yu family had hired mercenaries to kidnap Meishio. However, the Yu family was also shocked speechless to know that Meishio had a relationship with player Yuan, someone they have been looking for themselves. They wanted to approach Meishio for more information, but they were afraid of player Yuan knocking on their doors. After all, if player Yuan dared to threaten to destroy the Cultivators Association before the chairman of the Cultivators Association at their main headquarters, what would stop him from visiting the Yu family? The Yu family then called Mr. Johnson to cancel the pending job. What happened at the Cultivators Association would be a hot topic on the news and the internet for the rest of the week, and Chairman Zhao would resign his position as chairman the following day, which didn't surprise anyone when they learned about it. Chapter 512, Hidden Experts. Senior Wang, was that masked person really a spirit master? One of the youngsters with Senior Wang asked her as they made their way back home on a private plane. Yes, that person was without a doubt a spirit master, the same level as me and the other elders, she confirmed. That young man also sounded like he was around your age. I cannot imagine how terrifying his talents must be to reach spirit master at such a young age, and it would be even more terrifying if he only started cultivating after became a thing. That can't be possible, right? Someone else there asked. The question is no longer whether it's possible or not, but how he achieved it. Senior Wang said in a low voice. And whether he started cultivating before or after doesn't really matter, as it won't change the fact that he's a spirit master at such a young age. Anyways, although our visit to the Cultivators Association turned out to be a huge waste of time, I am actually glad that we went there, as I got to learn the existence of such a cultivation monster. The others in the family will go crazy once they learn about this young man. As for the other families, we'll definitely be fighting for him. If he's that famous player Yuan, there's a good chance that he won't join any families, right? Someone there asked. Yes, but it won't hurt to try. Senior Wang nodded. Who's this player Yuan? I have never heard of him before. Another person said. You don't know player Yuan? Don't you play? Why would I play a game about cultivation when I am already doing it in real life? No wonder why you don't know him. Well, let me tell you about player Yuan and his achievements. And for the rest of their flight, the young cultivators shared information about player Yuan and his achievements with those that didn't know of his fame. Meanwhile, after returning home, Yuan removed his mask and sat in the living room in an exhausted manner with sweat dripping down his face. Are you okay? Meishio asked him as she gently wiped the sweat off his face with a dry towel. Yes, I'm fine. But that was more exhausting than I'd expected. Since the young master cannot talk right now, I will explain everything for him, Mei Feng said, and he proceeded to recall everything that had happened at the Cultivators Association. Meishio expressed disbelief after hearing the situation. Why you went there as player Yuan, even threatening the chairman? Heavens, are you sure everything will be fine? Meishio spoke in a worried voice. We can't really say for now. Give it a few days and we'll see if anything will happen. However, they don't know the young master's identity, so they won't be able to do anything to him now even if they want to. But young master, you really surprised me today, and I am not talking about your identity as player Yuan. I didn't even know you can act so domineering. You felt like an entirely different person today. I still have chills just thinking about it, Mei Feng said to him in a somewhat admiring voice. Oh, most of that was just an act, since if I didn't act like that, they wouldn't have taken me seriously. Yuan smiled. Was it really just an act? It felt too realistic, Mei Feng thought to herself. Can you tell me more about your identity as player Yuan? The Yu family have asked me to investigate, but I came up with nothing. Yuan nodded and proceeded to tell her about his identity as player Yuan and some of the stuff he's done in cultivation online. I see. That explains why you're so powerful even in the real world. Turns out that you have been cultivating with a divine-grade cultivation technique this entire time. What are we going to do now? Meishio asked them a moment later. Who knows, but I intend on going to the Jaded Garden to speak with those seniors next month, Yuan said. Are you sure that's a good idea? What if it's a trap? Mei Feng said. I think it'll be fine. If they really wanted to harm me, they could have done so back then. All three of them, and probably the other elders there, were all spirit masters. There was no way I could have defeated them by myself. Furthermore, they didn't appear to be bad people. Why do you want to speak with them, though? Meishio then asked. I want to know more about the cultivation world, in this world. Apparently, they have known about cultivation since many centuries again, hence why they have been able to reach Spirit Master. Yuan said. So they're basically hidden experts that have been secretly cultivating for many years. I am very impressed by how they have managed to keep cultivation hidden from the public for so long. Mei Feng said. Yes, I am too. That's why I want to speak with them. I will come with you, Meishio said. Of course. I was going to ask you if you wanted to come later. Yuan nodded. Anyways, I'm going to take a shower. My body is all sweaty. Yuan then entered the bathroom and went to clean himself. You know that he was player Yuan this entire time? Mei Feng asked Meishio after he left. Yes. Well, aren't you a lucky one? Sometime later, Yuan returned to the living room, where Meishio and Mei Feng were watching the news. Look, young master. They are already talking about the incident at the Cultivators Association. About player Yuan. Mei Feng said as she turned the volume up a little more. Breaking news. Player Yuan has finally made an appearance today at the Cultivators Association. He even confronted Chairman Zhao, threatening to destroy the Cultivators Association if they continued to mess with his woman. Who is this Meishio that player Yuan treasures so deeply? Could it be his girlfriend? Fiancé? Perhaps even his wife. His wife. Meishio was speechless after she listened to how the news spoke about their relationship, making it seem as though they were lovers. Chapter 513. Why do you reject my existence? Yuan, isn't that you? Meishio pointed at the television that was currently playing a recording from the surveillance camera at the Cultivators Association, allowing everyone to witness the drama for themselves. They could see two figures entering the building and walking straight towards the front. A few moments later, the figure wearing a black mask suddenly smashed the metal table into pieces, shocking everyone there. Then the guards surrounded the masked individuals, but they didn't dare advance any further for some reason, almost like there was an invisible force that kept them from approaching the masked figure. A few minutes later, Chairman Zhao and the elders could be seen approaching the masked figure. It was at this moment the masked figure walked in front of the chairman before lifting him into the air by the neck. A few more moments later, the masked figure tossed the chairman like a child getting bored of their toy and walking away. However, the masked figure was stopped by the elders, and after some conversation, the masked figure disappeared from the Cultivators Association. Of course, all of this was played without any sound. But even without any sound, the spectators could see how domineering that masked figure was, and they had no doubt that he had the capabilities to destroy the Cultivators Association from his demeanor alone. Seeing Player Yuan for the first time, many people were in awe of his display of dominance, and those that were already fans of Player Yuan became even more obsessed with him. How embarrassing, Yuan said with a bashful smile on his face after seeing himself acting so out of character, almost like he was watching a play. If I didn't know you were going to do this beforehand, I would have never guessed that masked figure would be you, Meishio said in a dumbfounded voice. I was actually afraid that the young master might accidentally kill the chairman when he grabbed the chairman by his neck, Meifeng said. K-kill? Why would I do something so extreme? Yuan was surprised to hear this. People do extreme things when they're angry, Meifeng said. Even if that's true, I wouldn't kill someone just because I am angry. At least I hope I won't. Suddenly, Meixia's phone started ringing. It's Yu Rou, Meishio said to them before answering the phone. Hello, Meishio? Are you watching the news right now? Did Yuan really visit the Cultivators Association today? Yu Rou asked her in an excited voice. Yes, it's true, Meishio said. Unbelievable. Yu Rou's dumbfounded voice resounded after a moment of silence. To think her brother would be so daring to storm the Cultivators Association shortly after his recovery. She can only imagine what he might do in the future. Is he okay? Yu Rou then asked. Yes, everything is okay, for now. I think he should be fine as long as nobody knows his identity, Yu Rou said. And even if the Cultivators Association learns of his identity, I don't think it should cause any worry since a lot of people admires Player Yuan. There will be plenty of people willing to help him if he gets into any trouble. Anyways, just stay put for the next few days and see what happens. Also, keep me updated, Yu Rou said. Okay. An hour later, Wang Xiuying also gave them a call to make sure they were okay. After dinner, Meifeng said, Young master, I will have to go back to work tomorrow, so tonight is our last night together. I see. It was fun, Miss Meifeng. It reminds me of the day when you were still taking care of me, Yuan said to her. And I will continue to take care of you from the shadows, until I am no longer needed, Meifeng said with a smile on her face. That night, Meifeng snuggled closer to Yuan than usual. Good night, young master. Good night. Once he fell asleep, Yuan returned to the land of dreams. Looks like you had quite some fun today. The handsome man appeared before him, just like had expected. Remember, what you experienced today is what it feels like to be the strong. As long as you're powerful, nobody will dare to defy you, nobody will dare to hurt those close to you. Yuan silently stared at the handsome man with a slight frown on his face. What is it? The man asked him. The way I acted today. You're affecting me, aren't you? Yuan said in a low voice. I have no idea what you're talking about. The handsome man shrugged. Don't lie to me. I nearly killed Chairman Zhao today. If I didn't snap out of my anger, I would have snapped his neck in half instead when I had it in my grasp. I had this nearly uncontrollable desire to do so. The handsome man chuckled and said, So what? You're simply acting true to yourself. You're worried that if you didn't kill him, he would eventually return to bother you and your loved ones again, right? That's why you had an urge to kill that man. Don't blame me for your own desires. After all, I am you. If you blame me, you're simply blaming yourself. Why do you reject my existence? You know, the more you refuse to accept me, the more difficult it will be for you when you must accept me, and that time will eventually come. Yuan remained silent. Whatever. You don't need to accept me now, but eventually, the handsome man turned around and began disappearing into the mist. Once the man was gone, the scenery changed, and even more of the handsome man's past began revealing itself to Yuan. Yuan wanted to close his eyes and ignore the dream, but alas, since he was in a dream, even if he closed his eyes, he would still be able to see the dream. Therefore he was forced to watch everything until he woke up. Huh? Why is this happening to me? Yuan mumbled in a low voice. Chapter 514. Do you believe in reincarnation? Good morning, young master. Mei Feng greeted him when he walked out of his room. Miss Mei Feng? You're cooking breakfast today? Yuan said. That's right. Since I am no longer on vacation and I will be leaving soon, I want to do something for you before I leave. You're also up earlier than usual today, young master. Yes, I had another bad dream. He sighed. You know, nightmares usually happen because you're stressed or when you're thinking too much about a certain thing. If there's something on your mind, you should let it out. Although I won't be here, you still have Meishio. I'm sure you can tell her about it. Mei Feng said to him. I will keep that in mind. Yuan nodded. A few minutes later, Meishio woke up and came out of her room, but to her surprise, her mother had already prepared breakfast for them. I only made enough for you two since I won't have the time to sit down and eat, Mei Feng said after placing the food on the table. Thank you, Miss Mei Feng. I hope you take more breaks so we can spend more time together. Yuan said. Mei Feng chuckled and said, although I would like that as well, I don't want to disturb your love nest too much. A love nest. Meishio nearly spat out the water in her mouth when she heard Mei Feng's words. Anyways, I will see you later. Stay safe, young master. If you ever run into any troubles, give me a call. Mei Feng then left the place shortly after. Meishio turned on the television while they ate so it wouldn't feel as awkward. As many of us had anticipated, Chairman Zhao from the Cultivators Association has handed in his resignation letter after yesterday's drama and will no longer be affiliated with the Cultivators Association. You resigned? Things turned out much better than I'd expected. Yuan said after chewing and swallowing the food in his mouth. Wow, this food is amazing. He then realized how great the food tasted and praised it loudly. Of course, your food also tastes great, Meishio, but there's something different about Miss Mei Feng's cooking. Yuan added since he didn't want to upset her. Don't worry, I am well aware that I am still nowhere near my mother's level, she said in a calm voice. I don't think you should compare yourself to Miss Mei Feng. Not only are you less experienced, but you're also much younger than her. If anything, you should compare yourself to people around your age. Meishio nodded. Sometime later, Meishio asked, what are you going to do today? Well, it's been a while since we've last played. I'm thinking about playing today. Okay. You can go ahead and play with me. I want to make sure that everything is actually fine before I relax. I understand. What about Yu Rou and Xia Jingyi? It might be a bit early, so give them a text first. Meishio then texted Yu Rou and Xia Jingyi to see if they wanted to play. Yu Rou, sorry, but I won't be able to play for a while since I will be busy with a few things. Xia Jingyi, I am really close to a breakthrough. I think. So I am going to focus on cultivation for now. Sorry. After breakfast, Yuan went into his room and laid on the bed. He then wore the console and went inside Cultivation Online without any help for the first time. Welcome back, brother Yuan. Xiaohua and Lan Yingying greeted him. Good morning, you two. Have you dealt with whatever was troubling you? Xiaohua asked him. Yes, I have, for now. Yuan then looked around and asked, Feng Feng still hasn't returned? Suddenly, Feng Yuxiang's voice resounded, I have been back for a while now. A beautiful woman suddenly approached them from behind. It's been a while, Feng Feng, Yuan said to her with a smile on his face. Yes. Feng Yuxiang nodded, still having some trouble looking straight into his eyes. Where are the others? Feng Yuxiang then asked. They are currently busy, so it's just me today. I see. Well, what would you like to do today? Feng Yuxiang then asked him. Let's go somewhere quieter. How about that pond where we studied our techniques? Yuan suggested. Sure. They then made their way towards the silent pond. Once they arrived, Yuan approached the water and silently stared at the water. Did something happen to the young master? He feels a little different than usual. Feng Yuxiang noticed this and asked the other two. No idea. They shook their heads. After standing there for a couple of minutes, Yuan turned around and asked the three ladies, Do you guys believe in reincarnation? Reincarnation? They repeated. It's a common topic in the world of cultivation, right? Well, although reincarnation is definitely a very popular belief amongst many cultivators from the lower heavens to the supreme heaven, nobody has ever been able to prove that it exists. Feng Yuxiang said. Do you believe it exists? Yuan then asked. Of course. In case you forgot, young master, I am a phoenix. I am the embodiment of rebirth. However, I have never experienced reincarnation, nor do I know anybody that has been reincarnated. With that being said, even if someone is reincarnated, I don't think they will retain the memories of their previous life, or it would have been proven to truly exist by now. Feng Yuxiang said. I see. Why are you suddenly interested in reincarnation, young master? Well, it's been on my mind ever since someone mentioned it to me, and I am sort of in this deep hole that I cannot get out because of it. Yuan sighed. If you ask me, I don't think it really matters if reincarnation is real or not. What happened in one's past life has already ended when that person died. Even if they somehow recall the memories of their previous life, what can they do about it? It's not as if they could reclaim the name of their previous life and act like they never died. That makes sense. Yuan nodded, agreeing with Feng Yuxiang's words. Chapter 515, Relentless Dragon Overwhelms the Nine Heavens. After thinking about the words Feng Yuxiang spoke to him, Yuan took a seat beside the pond and retrieved the ancient rank technique Relentless Dragon Overwhelms the Nine Heavens. I am going to spend the rest of the day trying to comprehend this technique since it felt like I was getting close to understanding it when I stopped previously. You guys can do whatever. Yuan said to them before focusing on the technique. Feng Yuxiang exchanged looks with the other two. Is it just me or does the young master feel a little different today? Feng Yuxiang asked them. Just a little. Xiaohua agreed. The Lord feels a little more mature. Or at least the aura around him. Lan Yingying said. Let's just hope it doesn't mean anything bad. Feng Yuxiang sighed. A few hours later, Yuan stood up and took a deep breath. He then positioned himself that made it seem like he was prepared to throw a punch. Yuan closed his eyes, and after a moment of silence, he snapped them open and released his fist, sending a powerful wave of spiritual energy that was shaped like a dragon towards the pond. Boom. The entire ground shook as the pond was immediately erased from existence, the water and all, leaving a huge crater behind. Yuan was left speechless by the destructive nature of the technique that erased an entire pond. Fortunately for them, there were no living creatures within the pond. Heavens! Young master, where did you learn such a powerful technique? Feng Yuxiang asked him afterward. The Dragon Temple, he said. Such a powerful strength, it must be divine rank or above. Yes, it's an ancient rank technique. Yuan looked at the sky that was getting dark and said, I am going to leave now. It might be some time before I return since it'll be a little busy for me. Also, you don't have to wait for me. If you want to do something, just go ahead and do it without me. Yingying, you wanted to look around the lower heavens, right? You can have Feng Feng and Xiaohua take you around. I want to explore it with you. Lan Yingying said. It's okay, the nine heavens is a vast universe. We'll be able to explore it together plenty when I am able to play more. If it's your wish. Lan Yingying nodded. Then with that settled, I will see you guys later. See you later, young master. Stay safe, brother Yuan. After saying their goodbyes, Yuan logged out of the game and returned to practicing his movement technique in the real world whilst his servants began exploring the lower heavens without him, though it was mostly for Lan Yingying. As much as he wanted to play, there were simply too many things for him to do in the real world. Once things calm down, he will return and fully explores the nine heavens. Yuan, you know the entire world is looking for you right now, right? Meishio said to him during his break from practicing the movement technique. Unless I reveal myself, I don't think anybody will be able to find me. I guess, but there are also people looking for me since they think that by finding me they'll find you, which is true. The only people who know of your identity and location are the Yu family, Dr. Wang and Wang Xiuing, Xia Jingyi and Chairman Zhao, and I guess the agency that was hired by the Yu family, Yuan said. This might become a little troublesome, especially since there are some people who we definitely cannot trust to keep your identity hidden. What do you want to do, Meishio? Do you want to move out? It'll become problematic when our doors get flooded with people asking about player Yuan. We have the funds to do so as well. Meishio pondered for a moment before speaking. Where can we go, though? Furthermore, even if they find me, they won't know that you're player Yuan, so I think it would be fine. I still think it would be better for us to move once we find a good place. Yes, I agree. But for now, let's just see how things play out. Okay. With that decided, Yuan and Meishio proceeded to spend the next few days just improving their cultivation base. During these few days, the Cultivations Association had appointed a new chairman, who made a public apology regarding the actions of the previous chairman. One can imagine why the new chairman felt the need to apologize, as he didn't want the mysterious player Yuan to hold a grudge against the Cultivators Association because of the last chairman, which would be a big blow to them even though player Yuan was only a single individual. Although player Yuan was only a single individual, his influence inside Cultivation Online was comparable to multiple large companies combined, and nobody knows the true extent of his powers. One might argue that being influential inside a video game isn't that important, but when one considers how much Cultivation Online currently affects the world, one would understand why people value player Yuan so much. Ding. Early in the morning, Meishio received a message from Yu Rou that told her to make a call whenever she was available. Meishio then called Yu Rou the next moment since she was free. Did something happen? Meishio asked. Yes. I have decided to join a cultivation faction, so I will be leaving the Yu family soon. Yu Rou said, dumbfounding Meishio. After all, she had only told Yuan about her decision to leave the Yu family during her visit. Why you're leaving the Yu family as well? What? Meishio couldn't help but ask her. Well, for one, now that cultivation has become fully incorporated into our world, other talents won't be as valued. In fact, I haven't had to participate in any lessons for a long time now. This is probably my parents' way of telling me to give up on music and focus solely on cultivation. Furthermore, I don't think I can stop blaming myself for what happened to you and brother Tian due to my affiliation with the Yu family. Hopefully, leaving the Yu family can relieve some of that guilt. Yu Rou sighed. Chapter 5:16, Eternal Lotuses. Are you still worried about that? Neither Yuan nor I blame you for what happened, not even in the slightest. Meishio said to her. I know, but it's just a feeling that I cannot shake off. Of course, I have other reasons why I want to leave the Yu family, such as wanting to be independent like you and brother Tian. I don't want to rely on the Yu family forever, and I feel that if I remain in the family for any longer, I will never be able to leave. After a moment of silence, Meishio said, I understand. Let me transfer you to Yuan so you can speak with him. Meishio then knocked on Yuan's room and said, It's Yu Rou. Yuan opened the door while wearing only his pants, his body soaked in sweat from exercising. Here you go. Meishio handed him the phone with a slightly rosy face. Good morning, Yu Rou. Yuan placed the phone on speakers then on his bed before speaking with her while he continued to exercise. You're exercising already? Don't push yourself too hard. Yu Rou said to him as she could hear him exercising. Don't worry, I know when to stop, Yuan said. Anyways, I am calling to let you know that I have decided on a cultivation faction. I will be joining them next week. They're also in another city, so I will be moving out soon. Already? Yuan stopped moving and expressed his surprise. I didn't think you'd leave so soon and going to another city? How far are you traveling? What about this cultivation faction? What's their name? Yuan bombarded her with questions. About 8,000 miles away, so I will be traveling pretty far. 8,000 miles? That's around 16 hours with a plane. Why are you going that far? Why can't you just join a cultivation faction that's already in this city? After all, it would only be more difficult for them to visit each other the further away they are from each other. Well, this cultivation faction is a little special, and even if it's a little far, I think it's worth it. Yu Rou said. After a moment of silence, Yuan asked, What's this cultivation faction called? They are called Eternal Lotuses. It's a female-only cultivation faction that's led by the one and only White Lotus, who is a top player in. They already have over 1,000 talented cultivators, and they are a powerful faction and also one of the fastest-growing factions in the world. White Lotus. Yuan recalled hearing this name before. White Lotus is a well-known player from a top 10 legacy family. She is also a trustworthy individual according to my sources. I think it'll be fine if I go there. Furthermore, I won't be going there alone. I spoke with Xia Jingyi yesterday and she agreed to come with me. Knowing that Yu Rou won't be traveling alone made Yuan feel more relieved, but he was still worried. After all, Yu Rou was only 16 years old. Brother, I know what you are thinking. I may be young, but I can take care of myself. I know you can. After all, you took care of me for many years. However, it's a brother's duty to worry about his sister, right? Yuan said with a gentle smile on his face. Anyways, have you spoken to your parents about this yet? He then asked. No, I haven't, nor do I plan on telling them since they will definitely refuse to let me go, she responded calmly. How long do you plan on staying there? In the Eternal Lotuses? I don't know, but it's going to be at least a couple of years. Give me the address so that we can visit you in the future when we have the time. Of course, but I don't think they allow male visitors inside their place, so I will have to meet you somewhere else. That's fine. Yuan and Yu Rou spoke to each other for many minutes until Yu Rou had to go. I will call you later, brother. Okay. After hanging up, Yuan asked Meishio, do you think we can do a performance before Yu Rou leaves in a week? I don't care what kind of performance. Even a contest is okay as long as I get to play an instrument. You want to perform in public right now? That's a little risky, no? I think it should be fine. I want to fulfill Yu Rou's dream a little before she leaves. Alright. I will try to do something about it. Thank you, Meishio. Yuan returned to his training shortly after, and Meishio began looking for a place where he could perform. 2 days later, Meishio found a place and said, there's going to be a small piano contest in 5 days, and it's the earliest one I can find. 5 days? Right when Yu Rou leaves, huh? Let's do it. I have already signed us up for it. I'll start at 8 a.m. in the morning, but we won't be on stage until 10 a.m. Great. Now we just need to let Yu Rou know. Meishio then called Yu Rou. Yu Rou, I have a surprise for you. Can you come to this location before 10 a.m. in the morning? 10 a.m.? What? What's going to happen in this place? Our flight is at 1 p.m. Yu Rou asked. It's okay, you can go to the airport from that place. As for why? It's a surprise. Don't worry, it won't last long at all. A few minutes at most. Okay. I will be there. Yu Rou agreed. You won't regret it. I promise. After hanging up, Yuan and Meishio began preparing for the small contest. Meanwhile, Yu Rou called Xia Jingyi to let her know that they'll be leaving a little earlier than planned to make a pit stop before their flight. And in the blink of an eye, 5 days passed. Chapter 517, Approaching the Stage. Early in the morning, Yu Rou opened the drawers to her desk and retrieved 2 items. A yellow envelope and a white letter that she had just written last night. Yu Rou placed the yellow envelope inside her large suitcase and the white letter on her desk. After making sure that she had everything, she left the building and took a taxi to Xia Jingyi's living quarters, not even bothering to use her family limousine. Good morning, Yu Rou. Xia Jingyi greeted her at the door. Morning, Jingyi. Are you ready? Yes, I am. Yu Rou looked at her watch. It was 9 a.m. We should arrive at the location my brother provided in 30 minutes. I wonder what he had planned for us. If you're really curious, you can look that place up and see if there are any events. Xia Jingyi suggested. However, Yu Rou shook her head and said, that's no good. My brother wanted to surprise me, so I will let him surprise me. It would no longer be a surprise if I know what to expect. Xia Jingyi nodded, and after saying her goodbyes to her parents, she entered her family's limousine with Yu Rou. Please take care of our daughter, Yu Rou. Xia Jingyi's parents said to Yu Rou. Of course. I will make sure nothing happens to her. I should also take this chance to thank you for letting my brother stay in your apartments. Yu Rou patted her chest with a confident smile. You don't have to thank us. If anything, we should be the ones apologizing for allowing that incident to occur. We'll make sure to increase security in that apartment. Yu Rou nodded, and she entered the car with Xia Jingyi while the driver packed their suitcases inside the car trunk. Once they were prepared, the limousine began driving towards the location given by Yuan. Meanwhile, Yuan and Meishio approached the reception inside a large building. Hello, we're here to participate in the contest, Meishio said to the receptionist, who was a little startled when she saw their appearance as both of them were wearing masks. What is the name of the participant? The receptionist then asked. Tian Yang of Divine Melody, she said. Please give me a moment to look through the system. I have confirmed your registration. I will check you in now. You will be called onto the stage at 10 a.m. Erase your identification card. You can wait in the spectator area or wait in the back room. After accepting his identification card, Yuan and Meishio proceeded to the spectators area, where hundreds of spectators were watching the current contestant playing the piano. It's been too long. I am starting to feel a little nervous, Yuan said with a smile behind his mask. You'll be fine, Meishio said. The two of them proceeded to watch contestants take their turns at the piano, and because of their masks, they attracted quite the attention from the people around them. Though, since masks weren't prohibited, nobody really approached them. Around 9:40 a.m. Yu Rou and Xia Jingyi pulled up at the location and left the car. This is. Yu Rou looked at the large banner hanging above the building and immediately knew what was going on. It's a music contest. Why did your brother tell us to come here? Xia Jingyi asked as she wasn't aware of his recovery. Yu Rou merely showed a gentle smile on her face and she said, who knows? Let's go inside. Upon reaching the receptionist before they could even speak, the receptionist behind the desk recognized Yu Rou's face and spoke in an excited voice. Aren't you Lady Yu Rou? What are you doing here? The people around them heard the name Yu Rou and turned to look in their direction with interest. Yu Rou? That music genius who won many international competitions. Hello, I am here to spectate the contest. Yu Rou said with a friendly smile on her face. Because of her background, she was very famous within the music industry, hence why the receptionist immediately recognized her. Spectate the contest? The receptionist was taken by surprise by her words. Why would someone famous like Yu Rou come to witness some small music competition? It didn't make sense. After all, there was nobody famous playing today. However, the receptionist didn't question her and quickly said, Of course. Please follow me to the VIP seats. The receptionist then led Yu Rou and Xia Jingyi to the VIP seats that were in front of the stage. Their presence quickly attracted the spectators there, and even the contestant was affected by their presence. Isn't that Yu Rou from the Yu family? What's a big shot like her doing here? Who knows? Maybe she's bored? Speaking of Yu Rou, I was there to witness her last performance and it was beyond amazing. I wonder when she'll do another performance. It's been a while since she performed too. The quiet spectators area turned a little noisy with Yu Rou's appearance, and although Xia Jingyi wasn't as famous as Yu Rou, there were some people who recognized her there. Time passed quickly. The time was 10:05 a.m. Our next contestant will be from the Divine Melody. Please welcome Tian. The speakers announced after the last contestant got off the stage. Divine Melody? What company is that? I have never heard of them. Me neither. I also don't know of any Tian. Perhaps it's a new company. Who would create a new music company at this time? They should have started a cultivation faction instead. Although it seemed like there was nobody interested in this unknown contestant, if one looked at Yu Rou's face right now, they would see pure excitement and anticipation. A few moments later, the spectators there could see a figure wearing a black mask slowly approaching the stage from the spectators area, and there was this unfathomable aura him that made the people there stop talking to focus on him. Chapter 5:18 Tian. Although nobody there besides Meishio and Yu Rou knew the identity of the masked contestant, they could somehow tell that he was a professional just by the manner he walked onto the stage and how he sat behind the piano. Yu Rou, this person. He's very skilled. Xia Jingyi said with a serious expression on her face. I think so too. Yu Rou nodded, still pretending to be ignorant. Once the atmosphere was completely silent, Yuan placed his hands on the piano keyboard and started playing the piano. The audience felt chills going down their spine when they heard the first 10 notes being played, and their ears vibrated with bliss. They have never heard or seen such a flawless performance before, nor did they expect to witness something this profound in such a small competition. Yuan's performance continued to be played flawlessly for the next 4 minutes, playing the whole song without making a single mistake. Every movement he made seemed to be made with elegance and grace, looking like he was dancing while playing the instrument. The spectators quickly began speculating that Yuan was a professional disguised as a beginner to surprise them, but they were unable to guess his identity. Heavens! Who is this person? The judges there were left speechless by Yuan's performance. In fact, they only needed to listen to his performance for half a minute to be convinced that he was going to win this competition without anyone getting close. The whole performance only lasted 4 minutes, but it felt like only a few seconds had passed for the spectators, as they were fully absorbed in his performance, feeling like they were in a dreamlike state throughout the whole performance. After playing his last note, Yuan stood up and turned to face the dazed audience before giving them a bow. The audience remained silent for another moment before they exploded with cheering and admiration. That was amazing. Play another song. Encore. The judges agreed with the audience and one of them said, Contestant Tian, can you do us a favor and play another song? You can pick the song. And don't worry, it won't affect your scores regardless of your performance. Yuan pondered for a moment before nodding his head and returning to his seat behind the piano. After taking a deep breath, Yuan began playing another song. However, nobody in the audience recognized this song, nobody but Yu Rou. Yu Rou's eyes widened with shock when she heard this song. Brother. She muttered in a low voice, trying her best to not shed any tears in public. The song being played by Yuan was a song had created for her when he was still actively playing for the Yu family. However, there weren't any good memories behind this song, as the day after he created this song, Yuan's body started to break. This song didn't last long and only lasted half as long as the previous song, but it was so intensive and fast-paced that it sounded longer than the previous song, and there were more than twice as many notes in this song. After finishing his second song, Yuan didn't stand up and waited for 10 seconds before starting his third song. Despite this, none of the judges or spectators complained. In fact, even the contestants there remained silent, as they knew that if they played after his performance, it would only make themselves look bad. When she heard the third song, Meishio could feel her heart throbbing faster and faster, as this was her favorite song, and memories began flowing inside her head. Whenever she was sad and brought to tears by her training, Yuan would play this song for her before comforting her with a hug, and it would work every single time, allowing her to endure another day of training. About 3 minutes later, Yuan stopped playing and stood up. He then bowed to the audience for a second time. The audience immediately erupted into a frenzy this time, and it was much louder than the previous cheering. Yuan started leaving the stage a moment later, and when the judges saw this, they stopped him. Wait a minute, contestant Tian Yang. What's the matter? Yuan turned to look at them. Can you tell us a little more about yourself? Who taught you how to play the piano? How long have you been playing? The judges asked him, as they wanted to obtain some information from him so that they could use that information to guess his identity. Yuan then said, I have been playing since I was young. As for my teachers, I had many teachers throughout my career, too much to name. You can tell us a few names if it's too many. I'm sorry, but I'd rather not. Yuan politely refused. Then can you tell us how old are you currently? Another judge asked him. I am currently 18 years old, approaching 19, he said. Why you're only 18 years old? The judges were shocked to learn this information. If this information was true, then one can only imagine how far he'll go when he's already this talented at his young age. However, this raised more questions than answered. Although there were many talented individuals at his age playing professionally in the music industry, the judges didn't know of any professional at Yuan's age with his level of talents. And this was true even for the older professionals, so does this mean he's actually a new pianist who's just stepping into the professional scene? Where has he been this entire time? How can someone this talented remain as a nobody? The judges proceeded to ask Yuan a few more questions, hoping to learn more about him, but Yuan skillfully answered their questions without giving them any information that would give away his identity. The judges eventually gave up and allowed him to leave the stage. Of course, the moment he left the stage, the spectators surrounded him for autographs even though this was his first appearance, as they were certain that he will become famous in the industry with his talents. Chapter 519, Tianyang 2. The situation got so bad that guards had to intervene. After many minutes of struggling to get the spectators back into their seats, Yuan approached Yu Rou and said, You must be Yu Rou from the Yu family. I have heard a lot about you from my teachers. Do you have some time right now? I'd like to speak with you. Yu Rou nodded with a calm expression on her face. I do. Jingyi, you can come too. Yu Rou said to her. Are you sure? Xia Jingyi asked. Yes, it's fine, Yuan confirmed. Xia Jingyi nodded and followed them outside while feeling like she'd met with Tianyang before. Once Yuan left the place, the contestants were finally able to breathe properly, but none of them wanted to go on the stage anymore. The judges understood their feelings and eventually decided to end the contest earlier than anticipated since nobody wanted to play the piano after Yuan's godlike performance. And even if they were to play the piano, the results were obvious. Once they were outside and in a secluded area, Yuan said, What did you think of my performance? Was it like how you remembered? Yu Rou didn't say anything and immediately went for the hug, taking Xia Jingyi by surprise. Why Yu Rou? Xia Jingyi truly didn't expect Yu Rou to suddenly hug a stranger. Or maybe she knew Tianyang and had been acting like she didn't. Do you not recognize my voice? Yuan turned to look at Xia Jingyi as he embraced Yu Rou. Xia Jingyi's eyes widened with shock upon her realization. How? One couldn't blame Xia Jingyi for not recognizing Yuan until now, as nobody would imagine that a cripple who couldn't move for many years would suddenly be able to move, much less play the piano flawlessly. However, this explained everything. If it was Yuan who was recognized as a once-in-lifetime genius, the flawless performance made perfect sense. It just happened, I guess. Are you really Yu Rou's brother? Xia Jingyi still held some doubt as it was too hard to believe. Jingyi, do you think I would touch another man that's not my brother, much less hug him? Yu Rou said to her as her arms wrapped around Yuan's body intimately. No. Xia Jingyi shook her head. Then there's your answer. I know it's hard to believe, but it's true. Xia Jingyi then watched in silence as Yu Rou and Yuan hug each other for a few more moments. I want us to stay like this forever, but unfortunately, we don't have much time here. Yu Rou said as she released him from her embrace. Since it's your decision, I won't try to convince you to stay. After all, you were the one who decided to take this path. Yuan said to her. Thank you for understanding, brother. I promise you that I will become a strong cultivator during our next visit. Yuan smiled underneath his mask and said, I look forward to when that day comes. Yu Rou nodded and then turned to look at the masked figure standing behind Yuan. I already told you this before you left the Yu family, but let me say this again. Please take care of my brother Meishiu. I will, she responded in a calm voice. Yuan then said, and please take care of my sister Jingyi. I'm afraid that I will be the one being taken care of. Xia Jingyi said with a bashful smile. Yuan shook his head and said, it's because I know that you'll be with Yu Rou that I am not as worried about her. If she was going alone, I would probably be trying to convince her to stay now. You really have no trust in me, huh? Yu Rou sighed. You know that's not true. Yuan chuckled. He then asked her, will you be playing Cultivation Online over there? Yu Rou nodded and said, we'll be cultivating in Cultivation Online and the real world as a group. However, I won't be able to play with you as often since I have to be with the others. That's fine. As long as we can still meet each other in Cultivation Online. Yuan said, and he continued, when you arrive at that place, try to log inside Cultivation Online. I have one last surprise for you. All right. I will let you know when I will be available. Yu Rou nodded. After talking to each other for some more, Yu Rou gave Yuan one more tight embrace before returning to the car with Xia Jingyi and heading to the airport. Goodbye, Meishiu brother Tian. Until next time, Yu Rou. Once Yu Rou and Xia Jingyi left the scene, Yuan said to Meishiu, let's go home too. What about the contest results? Meishiu asked. I don't really care about the results since I didn't come here for the reward, Yuan said. Okay, then let's go home. They also returned home shortly after. Meanwhile, Yuan's performance at the small contest was uploaded to the internet by one of the judges when they got their hands on the replay. The video quickly acquired traction, especially within the musician circles. Who is this Tian Yang? I have never heard of him before. Does anyone have information on this genius? 18 years old. I don't believe it. How can someone so young play so flawlessly? There were only two things that came to one's mind when one watched the video of Yuan's piano performance. Awe and doubt. They were in awe of Yuan's godlike talents and performance, but they also doubted his identity as an 18-year-old. After all, even the old experts who have decades of experience could not do so with such perfection. Shortly after the video went public, countless families across the world began investigating Tian Yang, and they started with his company Divine Melody that was only recently created. However, the owner of the company and its employers were all private information that cannot be found through normal means, so those with influence began making phone calls to people with authority and influence in hopes of finding more information about the Divine Melody and Tian Yang. Chapter 520 White Envelope. Dear, look at this. Tang Li stormed inside Yu Yong's room as he worked on the company. What happened? Yu Yong looked at her with his eyebrows raised. It has been a very long time since he has last seen his wife act so excited. Tang Li placed her laptop in front of him and played the video of Yuan's performance as Tian Yang. This is. Yu Yong stood up from shock after watching the performance for merely a couple of seconds. This is a genius. A true genius. Who is this masked man? Yu Yong quickly asked, but his eyes were still captivated by Yuan's flawless performance. His name is Tian Yang and he's currently with a new company named Divine Melody. However, nobody knows much if anything about this individual or the company itself since they both showed up out of the blue. Tang Li explained to him. Nobody? How is that possible? Who's the owner of the company? There are already plenty of people asking around, but nobody seems to have any idea. Nobody? I don't believe it. Yu Yong immediately retrieved his cell phone and started making calls to many prominent people within the industry. Mr. Nick, have you heard about a company called Divine Melody? Yu Yong asked. Mr. Yu. Trust me, I have heard this name so much today that I am starting to go crazy. You're calling me to ask about Tian Yang, right? Unfortunately, I have no information on him. I see. Yu Yong quickly hung up and proceeded to call another person. Mr. Yu, if you're calling me about the Divine Melody or Tian Yang, I have no clue. The person who picked up the phone gave it to him straight. Not even you know about them? Unfortunately, whoever made the company knew very well what they were doing and kept everything tightly sealed. Unless we find out who helped created this company, we may never know more about them. Have you tried hacking the system? Yu then asked. Trust me, you're not the first person to ask me that, and if it was successful, I wouldn't be so empty-handed right now. I understand. Keep me updated if you find anything. Yu said before hanging up. Yu proceeded to call many more people, but after an hour of effort, he still knew nothing about the company Divine Melody or Tian. After pondering, Yu decided to call Mr. Johnson, who was highly reputable when it comes to intelligence in this kind of subject. Master Yu, let me guess. This is about the Divine Melody. Yu could already guess the results after hearing Mr. Johnson's opening sentence. What do you know? Yu still asked. Nothing, as for right now. We have already received a dozen requests to find information on the company in Tianyang, but we have nothing as of this moment. Is there no way to contact this company? Yu asked. There is a way, one way. The company Divine Melody has one contact info, an email address. This is our only lead and we have already tried to contact them, so we're just waiting for a response right now. What's the email address? I will try to reach out to them myself, and I swear to God if you ask me to pay for... Don't worry, I won't ask for anything. Erase the email address. After receiving the email address from Mr. Johnson, Yu hung up and opened his laptop. No luck. Tang Li returned to his room sometime later and asked him. Nope. Whoever created the company seems to have expected this situation and has extensive knowledge regarding how things work, so we cannot dig out any information about them. However, not all is lost since we have an email address to contact the company. What if that doesn't work? Tang Li asked. Then we can only wait until they reveal themselves or make a mistake. Yu said. Meanwhile, back inside their apartment, Meishio stared at her laptop with her eyebrows raised. After participating in the contest, their Divine Melody Company email suddenly received over 1,000 emails, and they only kept on coming. Did something happen? Yuan noticed her expression during his training and decided to ask her. She nodded and explained it to him. That's normal. They're most likely trying to recruit me into their company. Yuan said, as he has plenty of experience with this even though he was already working for the Yu family. Yuan, look at this email. Meishio pointed to a certain email on the laptop screen. Yuan looked at it with his divine sense and laughed. The Yu family too? Well, I am not surprised at all. That's how they found me in the first place, because of a video that had gone viral. Are you going to answer to any of them? Yuan then asked her. No. I think it would be better if we ignore them for now. I think so too. Yuan nodded, agreeing with her. That afternoon, in Yu Rou's living quarters, one of the servants knocked on her door, completely unaware that Shed left the family. Young lady, you have been summoned by the masters. The servant said, patiently waiting outside her door. When nobody responded a minute later, the servant knocked on her doors again and repeated. Young lady, you have been summoned by the masters. After knocking a couple more times, the servant eventually decided to enter the room in case Yu Rou was playing Cultivation online. Excuse me, young lady. The servant opened the door, but to her surprise, the room was completely empty. Where's the young lady? The servants are usually aware of her schedule, and Yu Rou would always let someone know if she'd gone somewhere outside. However, there was no news from her today, and even her limousine was parked outside, so where did she go? After entering the room, the servant noticed the white envelope on the desk. Chapter 521, Bring her back. Master. We have an emergency. A servant working in the Yu family's headquarters urgently knocked on Yu Yong's doors. Enter. Yu Yong shouted from inside the room with a bad feeling in his guts. Once the servant entered the room, he asked her, what happened? It's about the young lady. She has left the family. The servant exclaimed. What? It took a minute for Yu Yong to process those words. Once he eventually digested the situation, he immediately frowned and said, what the heck are you talking about? Why would Yu Rou suddenly leave the family? This letter was left inside the young lattice room when someone went to notify her of your summoning. The servant quickly placed the white envelope that had been opened on Yu Yong's desk before taking a few steps back. Yu Yong stared at the white envelope that emitted an ominous aura for a few moments before picking it up and reading the contents inside. Dear father and mother, I have decided to leave the Yu family to join the cultivation faction Eternal Lotuses. You may be wondering why I made this decision. It's simple. I disapprove of how you all treated brother Tian and Meishio, and I cannot get rid of this guilt as the daughter of the Yu family that mistreated them. Therefore I have decided to leave. Don't even bother trying to convince me to return because I won't return even if it's the last thing I do. If you're thinking about forcing me back like how you tried to force Meishio back into the family just to sell her to Chairman Zhao, don't bother, unless you want to offend the entire Eternal Lotuses that's the #1 power within their city. However, as much as I despise the family, I must thank you for giving me life and allowing me to meet with brother Tian. Yu Yong read the letter while his entire body trembled from anger. What an ungrateful child. Yu Yong slammed the desk before him, creating a crack on the surface and knocking down the stacked documents to the floor. Call my wife here. Yu Yong turned to look at the servant and spoke in a commanding voice. Right away, master. The servant immediately rushed outside and went to notify Tang Li of the situation. Tang Li arrived before Yu Yong a few minutes later with a deep frown on her face. Is it true that Yu Rou left the family to join some cultivation faction? Tang Li asked Yu Yong, who reluctantly nodded his head. Then why are you still sitting there? Hurry up and bring her back. Tang Li shouted. Unlike Yuan, who was adopted into the family, Yu Rou was a true descendant of the Yu family, meaning that she was worth much more to the Yu family despite being much less talented than Yuan. Furthermore, Yu Rou was their only child, meaning that if she leaves, they will have nobody to continue the Yu family unless they give birth to another child. Even if she was less talented than Yuan, she could at least fulfill her duties as a child of the Yu family and continue their legacy. However, that was much easier said than done, especially since Tang Li was already past that age. While she could still give birth, it would come with huge risks to her and the unborn baby's health, so unless she absolutely have to, it wasn't an option. You have no idea. This situation isn't as easy as you think. Yu Yong shouted back at her. Yu Rou went to join the Eternal Lotuses. Although they're not as powerful as the Cultivators Association, their influence is on par with them. We cannot simply force her to return like Meishio. Eternal Lotuses? I have never heard of them. Tang Li said. Look them up. They're a female-only cultivation faction led by White Lotus, a famous cultivation online player who belongs to a legacy family in the top 10. There are also many descendants from the legacy family within their ranks. We cannot afford to offend them. Then what are we supposed to do? There is nothing we can do right now except give Yu Rou some time to calm her head. Once she's calm, we will try to convince her to return. Otherwise, we'll have to give up on her and make another child. Yu Yong said. That's easy for you to say since you don't have to carry a baby around for 9 months, nor do you have to do any of the hard labor. What about my feelings? I am no longer at the age where it's safe to conceive. Tang Li shouted. Calm down. This is only the worst-case scenario. There are definitely other methods, but for now let's just wait and see what happens. Yu Yong said. Tang Li didn't say anything and stormed outside the room in angry steps. Time passed quickly, and the following day, Yu Rou and Xia Jingyi arrived at their destination after their plane landed. Once they left the airport, Yu Rou looked around until she found an old woman holding a sign with their names, and she approached this woman. Hello, I am Yu Rou and this is Xia Jingyi. It's nice to finally meet you, Lady Yu Rou and Lady Xia Jingyi. You can call me Grandma Yin. I am in charge of bringing the newcomers to the Eternal Lotus's headquarters and a few other things. Grandma Yin then showed them to the car that was a white limousine. Once they were prepared to leave, Grandma Yin sat in the back with Yu Rou and Xia Jingyi while the driver, who was also a female, drove to the Eternal Lotus's headquarters. Allow me to give you a brief introduction to the Eternal Lotuses, even though I am sure that you are already aware of such information. It's mostly for formalities. Yu Rou nodded, and Grandma Yin proceeded to explain to them about the Eternal Lotuses. Chapter 522, White Lotus. As you should know by now, the Eternal Lotuses is a female-only cultivation faction created by White Lotus, who belongs to a legacy family ranked in the top 10. She is also a top player inside who has recently managed to reach peak Spirit Warrior. As for her real-life cultivation, she has achieved first-level Spirit Warrior just 3 days ago. Wow! First-level Spirit Warrior. Yu Rou and Xia Jingyi expressed awe upon hearing White Lotus' impressive cultivation speed. Compared to her, they were still in the mid-levels as a Spirit Apprentice, and they were considered geniuses by many people. Of course, compared to Yuan, she was still lacking a little, but if Yu Rou compared everyone with Yuan, the world would look less interesting and more lackluster. Although the Eternal Lotuses has only recently been made public, It was actually created shortly after became a thing. Oh, I didn't know that. Yu Rou said. Me neither. Xia Jingyi said afterward. Now let me tell you about what will happen once we arrive at the headquarters. Although we have already accepted both of you into Eternal Lotuses, you're actually still required to partake in a simple test. If you've gone to the Cultivators Association to receive your cultivation card, then you should already know what to expect. It's mostly to gauge your talents and to see how we should train you. Grandma Yin said. And she continued, there are a few physical tests, but those are mostly just to see your strength and test your limits. Can we fail these tests? What happens if we do? Xia Jingyi suddenly asked. It's fine if you fail these tests. It just means that we will need to train you more than others so you can catch up. Grandma Yin responded with a calm smile on her face. Once you're officially accepted into the Eternal Lotuses, you will live within the headquarters and be assigned a leader that is usually in charge of about 100 people. If you wish to leave the headquarters to go outside for whatever reasons, you must speak to an elder or your leader. This is mostly for your safety, as our headquarters are situated a little far from society. What about visitors? Can we have visitors? I have a brother and he told me that he'd visit me from time to time. Yu Rou asked. Visitors are only allowed inside the headquarters if they're female, but they must be screened. If they're a man like your brother or they failed the screening, you can only meet them outside the headquarters. I thought so. Yu Rou sighed. There will also be rules that must be followed as a fellow member of the faction, but we'll get into more of that once we actually arrive. About 3 hours later, the limousine stopped right outside an unknown wilderness. We're here. Grandma Yin said to them. Once they got out of the car and retrieved their luggage, Grandma Yin led the two girls inside the wilderness, where they continued to walk for another half an hour before they arrived before a large gate that was guarded by a group of female guards. Welcome back, Elder Yin. The guards greeted Grandma Yin with respect. I have returned with the newcomers, she said to them. Elder Yin, you know the leader doesn't like it when you go outside for these minor tasks that could be done by the others. One of the guards said to her. Grandma Yin laughed and said, I was bored. Anyways, let's take our newcomers to the welcoming area. Once the gates were opened, Grandma Yin led Yu Rou and Xia Jingyi inside the place and then to a spacious area that had around 40 other people gathered, all of them newcomers just like them. After waiting for another hour for a couple more people to show up, a beautiful young woman with white hair appeared before the newcomers. When the newcomers saw this beautiful young woman, they all greeted her with respect. Good morning, Senior White Lotus. That's White Lotus? Xia Jingyi looked at her unique white hair with interest, as this was her first time seeing her in person. It was the same for Yu Rou, but she knew how White Lotus looked beforehand due to the internet. My name is Bai Lianhua or White Lotus. I'd prefer it if you addressed me with the former while we're in the real world and the latter whenever we're inside cultivation online. Bai Lianhua said to them in a gentle voice that didn't fit her seemingly cold expression. I will speak with you all again later, but for now let's get your living quarters situated. And since many of you have just experienced a long journey, we will be starting the examinations tomorrow. With that being said, you're not allowed to wander the place without supervision since you're still not part of the Eternal Lotuses. If you're caught sneaking around, we'll immediately send you home. After saying a couple of sentences, Bai Lianhua turned around and disappeared. Senior Bai is really cool, right? I think I am in love. The newcomers were definitely in awe of Bai Lianhua's overwhelming presence. Sometime later, the ladies that came from all over the world were led to the living quarters and were assigned their room. Everybody had to share a room with another individual, and since Yu Rou came with Xia Jingyi, they were automatically assigned to be in the same room, which was exactly what they wanted. We will call you tomorrow when it's time to do the examinations. Until then, you're free to do whatever you want with the exception of roaming. If you wish to go somewhere, you can speak with a member wearing this white uniform, and there will always be someone guarding outside. The members instructed the newcomers. Once that was done, the newcomers retired inside the room for the rest of the day. Chapter 523, Gift. Wow, this place is bigger than I'd expected. Xia Jingyi said as she looked around the room that had 2 bedrooms, a living room, a bathroom, a kitchen, and even a small backyard. It feels like we're studying abroad as exchange students. Yu Rou smiled. Right? I was thinking the same thing. What should we do now? Xia Jingyi asked. Yu Rou pondered for a moment before speaking. Since we have the whole day to ourselves, I will use this time to meet with Brother Tian and just like I'd promised him. Yu Rou then unpacked her luggage, retrieving the console. Can I join you? Xia Jingyi asked. Of course. I don't see why you can't. Yu Rou nodded. Once everything was set up, Yu Rou called Meishio to tell them that they'd arrived safely and will be entering shortly. Although it's morning here, it should be nighttime where you are right now, right? Yes. We were just getting ready to sleep, but I will let Yuan know. Meishio then knocked on Yuan's door and told him about Yu Rou. Hello. Yu Rou? Are you going to enter in a bit? I will meet you there. Yuan said to her. Sorry for the inconvenience. I know it's late over there. Yu Rou said. Don't worry, this isn't my first time staying up late. Yuan chuckled. Then I will see you in a bit alongside Jingyi. All right. After hanging up the phone, Yu Rou and Xia Jingyi logged into and waited for Yuan and Meishio to appear. Meishio appeared a few minutes later, but Yuan was nowhere to be seen. Where's my brother? Yu Rou asked Meishio. He's coming here. He left the city for a moment recently to do something. Meishio explained to her. Okay. Sometime later, Yuan returned to the city and met up with the others. Where's Feng Feng and the others? Yu Rou asked him. Oh, I told them to explore the lower heavens without me since I won't be active for God knows how long, he said. I see. Then let's go somewhere more private so we can talk. Yu Rou suggested. They proceeded to rent a room in a random hotel for some privacy. Once they were all seated, Yu Rou began speaking. Let me tell you about our journey first. Sure. Yuan nodded. Yu Rou talked about their flight, the food they had during the flight, their landing, and their meeting with Grandma Yin and White Lotus. She also talked about their new living quarters and some information about the eternal lotuses. What do you think, brother? Are you still worried? Yu Rou asked him afterward. Yuan smiled and said, judging by what you've told me, the eternal lotuses does sound like a safe place. What about the Yu family? Have they tried to contact you since you left the family? Yu Rou shook her head. No, they haven't contacted me just yet. Maybe they still don't know about my departure. Or they know but don't care enough to contact me. I think it's better if they don't contact you. Yuan then said. I think so too. Yu Rou chuckled. What about you, brother? How have things been since the contest? Well, we've been receiving a lot of emails since then. In fact, we even got one from the Yu family. We haven't read any of them, but we can imagine what they want from us. Yuan said. That's only to be expected with your level of performance. It will only become worse, you know? Yu Rou said. Yes, I know. After talking to each other for some time, Yu Rou asked, Brother, what surprises do you have for me? I think I have been patient enough. Yuan smiled and said, Honestly, I wanted to save the surprise until you're ready to use it, or at least during a more proper setting. He then retrieved a beautiful fan from his storage ring and offered it to her. Here. It's an upgrade to your current weapon. It's called the Dragon Fan, and it's an Earth-grade treasure. Yuan finally handed Yu Rou the treasure head gotten from the Dragon Essence Temple. Yu Rou accepted the beautiful fan with a speechless expression on her face. Thank you. Yu Rou muttered after a long moment of silence. It's nothing much, but I hope you like it. Yu Rou then jumped off her seat and into Yuan's embrace. Thank you, brother. I will definitely treasure this fan as well as the old one. Forever. Yu Rou said in an excited voice. Yuan then turned to look at Xia Jingyi with an apologetic smile on his face. I'm sorry, but I don't have a gift for you now. However, I will definitely find one for you in the future. Xia Jingyi shook her hand and her head at the same time and said, It's okay, you don't need to worry about me. I don't deserve any gift anyways. That's not true. I will be relying on you to make sure that Yu Rou doesn't get herself into any trouble, so it's only natural I pay you back. I won't get into any trouble. Yu Rou refuted. Sure. Yuan laughed. They proceeded to spend a couple of hours just talking to each other since it might be some time before they can see each other again. All right, brother. I've taken up enough of your time. Go get some sleep. You too, Meishio. Yu Rou suddenly said to them. Yuan nodded and said, Remember, if you get into any trouble, let us know. And you'll come to rescue me like a prince on a white horse, right? I know, brother. Yu Rou chuckled. I'm serious, Yu Rou. You're very important to me. I do not wish anything bad to happen to you, or Jingyi. Yuan said with a solemn expression on his face. I promise. Yu Rou nodded. After saying their goodbyes and giving each other a hug, Yu Rou gave Yuan a kiss on the cheeks before they eventually logged off to do their own things. Chapter 524, Eternal Lotuses. After logging off, Yuan and Meishio went to sleep. Meanwhile, Yu Rou and Xia Jingyi tried to get used to their new living quarters. Once the sky darkened, someone knocked on their doors. "Hey, race your dinner for tonight." A member of the Entral Lotuses handed them 2 trays of food. "Don't worry, this is only for today and tomorrow. You'll get to eat in an actual cafeteria once you become a member." The member then said to them. After accepting the food, Yu Rou and Xia Jingyi cleared it with haste, as they were getting a little hungry since they haven't eaten since leaving the plane. The member returned an hour later to collect their empty plates. That night, Yu Rou and Xia Jingyi fell asleep with ease. The following morning, some members of the Eternal Lotuses gathered the newcomers and led them to the testing site, where they tested the newcomers their cultivation talents and their body limits. Although there were almost no requirements to join the Eternal Lotuses besides being a certain cultivation level, the newcomers were required to partake in this exam. Fortunately for the newcomers, failing the exams didn't mean they'll be barred from joining the faction, but it meant that they'll have to put in more effort than the others, as they'll be training separately from the others. The examination took nearly the entire day, and at the end of the day Bai Lianhua reappeared before them with the results in the form of a piece of paper. There are many ranks within the Eternal Lotuses. From the lowest to the highest: Green Lotus, Blue Lotus, Yellow Lotus, Red Lotus, and lastly Violet Lotus. If you'd acquired above 80 points in the examination, you'll start out as a Blue Lotus. If you scored below 80 points, you will start at the lowest, Green Lotus. There really isn't much of a difference between each rank between the Green Lotus and the Yellow Lotus, so you don't have to worry about being treated differently. The only thing different about each rank will be your training schedule. Everyone will receive fair treatment, meaning that regardless of your rank, you'll receive the same support as your fellow sisters who may have a lower or higher rank. However, that doesn't mean you can ignore seniority within the ranks. And in order to incentivize you to increase your position within the faction, I will be allowing those who reach the rank of Red Lotus to train a Heaven rank cultivation technique and those who reach Violet Lotus to learn a Divine rank cultivation technique, the same one that I am currently cultivating. The newcomers were shocked to learn this information, as they weren't aware that someone else besides player Yuan had acquired a Divine rank cultivation technique. After all, the world announcement only lets the players know of the first person to obtain a certain rank and not the others, so unless one announced it, nobody would know about it. As for everyone else, you will be allowed to cultivate using an Earth rank cultivation technique. Of course, this isn't mandatory. If you're satisfied with your current cultivation technique, you may continue cultivating with it. Bai Lianhua said to them. And she continued, "Now allow me to talk about the rules. There are very few rules within the Eternal Lotuses compared to the other factions, but we take these rules very seriously. 1. You are not allowed to harm another member in any way unless you're both sparring against each other during an official match or during practice. Depending on the severity, you will be demoted or receive fewer resources for a certain amount of time. If severe enough, we might even kick you out of the faction. 2. You are not to leak any information you learn from this place outside. What happens inside this place stays inside. Once again, depending on the severity and information you leaked, you will be punished accordingly. 3. You will not do anything that will harm or tarnish the faction's reputation. Depending on the situation, we'll punish you accordingly. 4. You will listen to your senior's orders as long as it's a lawful order. Last but not least, you will not betray the faction or any of its members in any fashion. If you're caught doing so, getting kicked out of the faction will be the least of your worries. That's all I have for you. You will learn more about the faction and its members as you live with us. Training begins tomorrow morning after breakfast, which starts at sunrise and ends 2 hours later. Good night, Senior Bai, the new members said to her. After Bai Lianhua left the scene, one of the members wearing a uniform with red lotuses on it said to them, "Before you all retire for the night, you need to receive your uniforms. If you've scored above 80 points today, stand on the right, and if you've scored below, stand on the left." Yu Rou then made her way to the right side while Xia Jingyi, who missed 80 points by only 3 points, stood on the left. Once everyone was in line, they followed the Red Lotus member to receive their uniforms. Every member received 3 pairs of uniforms. You only really need 2 pairs of uniforms since you'll have your uniforms washed every day, but just in case you destroy one, you're given a third. If you're ever down to just 2 uniforms, ask for another one. Also, Senior Sister Bai didn't mention this, but if you intend on leaving the faction for whatever reason, you must speak with her before you're allowed to do so. Though I don't understand why anyone would want to leave this paradise. If you cannot tell already, compared to the other factions, we're quite lenient and very fair towards our members as long as they don't do anything stupid. However, don't take advantage of senior sister Bei's kindness because if you anger her, let's just say you don't want to see her angry. Sometime later, Yu Rou and the others returned to their rooms with their new uniforms. After a quick shower and dinner, they went to sleep and prepared themselves for training tomorrow. Chapter 525. Once a week. Early in the morning before sunrise, Yu Rou and Xia Jingyi left their rooms after washing their face. Yu Rou was already used to waking up this early in the morning as a Yuan's caretaker, so she wasn't bothered by it. Xia Jingyi, however, had struggled to wake up. If it wasn't for Yu Rou who pulled her blanket from her bed, she wouldn't have woken up. Thank you for waking me up, Sister Rou. It's only the first day of training and I am already troubling you. Xia Jingyi sighed as they made their way to the cafeteria. Don't mention it. A few minutes later, they arrived before a 4-story tall building that was the size of a mini-mall. This is the cafeteria? Xia Jingyi looked up at the building with a dazed look on her face. Yu Rou looked at the map given to them last night and nodded. This should be the right place. Look, there are plenty others coming to this place. We are definitely in the right place. Yu Rou added. This place is just a small city in the middle of the wilderness. I wonder how long did it take them to build this place? Xia Jingyi wondered out loud. Probably not long based on what Grandma Yin told us about this place. Anyways, let's go inside and see what they have. The two of them entered the building a few moments later, and to their surprise, there were food stores on every single floor with at least 6 unique stores and restaurants on each floor. I was just thinking to myself how life will be for us when the nearest city is 3 hours away. I guess this answers it. Yu Rou mumbled in a low voice. With this many restaurants and variety of foods, they definitely won't get bored of the food here anytime soon. If the other places are anything like this, I wouldn't mind living here forever, Xia Jingyi said. The two of them proceeded to spend a couple of minutes looking for a restaurant to eat at. They finished eating in half an hour and used their remaining time to look around the place. Once it was almost time for training, Yu Rou and Xia Jingyi went separate ways since they were of different ranks, meaning they trained differently. Meanwhile, 8,000 miles away inside Yuan's apartment, Yuan just finished his daily routine and prepared to wash himself. Yuan, are you sure you don't need any help? How are you washing your back? Meishio asked him before he entered the bathroom. Oh, it's a little difficult but I can manage, he said. You know you don't have to do everything yourself. I know you want to rely on yourself now that you can finally move, but you should rely on others as well. At this rate, I will have nothing else to do besides cooking and cleaning the apartment, but who knows when you'll take that away from me too. Meishio said in a sighing voice. Yuan stopped to ponder for a moment. I am still technically your caretaker, Yuan. Let me assist you like I was trained. You can do everything else yourself. After all, I don't want to feel like I trained for nothing. Hearing her words, Yuan said to her, Sorry, I haven't taken your feelings into consideration. Can you please help me wash my back? Of course. Meishio quickly responded. They entered the bathroom together a few moments later. Take a seat, Meishio said to him. Yuan nodded and sat on a small bathroom chair. Meishio then rinsed his body with water before rubbing his back with her soapy hands. Once his back was covered in soap, Meishio asked him, Shall I wash the front too? If you don't mind, he said. I don't, she responded and walked to the front before squatting down. A moment later, she started rubbing her soft hands on his refined body. Starting from the top then moving straight to his legs, Meishio washed every inch of his body. Once there was only a single area left, Meishio cleared her throat and asked, Did you want me to wash that part too? Meishio expected Yuan to refuse, but to her surprise Yuan repeated, If you don't mind. Meishio took a deep breath and started washing his cute snake. However, that cute snake quickly woke up and turned into a ferocious dragon. Seeing this, Meishio asked him, Have you relieved this part recently? To tell you the truth, I have tried to do it by myself, even mimicking your movements, but I can't get it to work. It just doesn't feel the same, he said in a sighing voice. I understand. Then allow me to do it for you. And don't you dare use divine sense while I am doing this. Meishio said in a bashful voice, and she began relieving him. Yuan's body quickly started trembling with delight from Meixia's skillful techniques, feeling a certain sensation that he couldn't replicate by himself for some reason. A few minutes later, Yuan released his stress all over the floor. According to my research, a man should relieve himself at least daily, which comes with certain health benefits. If you want, I can help you every day. Meishio said to him as she washed the sticky white stuff away with the shower head. Every day? Yuan hesitated this time. If that's too much, we can do it once every other day, or even once a week, she said. Once a week sounds good enough. I understand. Then in addition to washing your body, I will help you relieve your stress once a week. Meishio said. Okay, but you don't have to help wash my body every time I want to rinse my body after sweating from my exercise. Then I will help you whenever you take your last shower for the day. Okay, he nodded in agreement. And thus, their life continued in this manner for the next 2 weeks, with Yuan spending most of his day training his body while Meishio cultivated normally and did the housework. Before they were aware, it has been almost a month since Yuan visited the Cultivators Association, meaning that it was about time for him to visit the Spirit Masters had met at that time to learn more about cultivation and their history. Chapter 526, Taking the Airplane? You want to go like this? Meishio spoke as she watched Yuan retrieve his wheelchair before sitting on it. Yes, I will disguise myself once I arrive at that place, he nodded. I guess that makes sense. Will you be able to carry the luggage as well? Yuan then asked. Yes, I will be fine, Meishio responded in a calm voice as she carried a massive backpack on her back that looked incredibly heavy. Despite its frightening appearance, the backpack mostly had clothes and some other light objects, so it wasn't actually that heavy, not that it would matter to Meishio, who could lift a car with her bare hands and without breaking a sweat. Since they don't know when they'll return, Meishio packed a little more clothes than usual. Of course, if they needed anything they had plenty of money to buy them. Once they were prepared, Meishio left the apartment with Yuan and took a taxi to the airport. Meishio showed their tickets that had been purchased beforehand to the worker at the airport. First class. The worker was surprised to see 2 youngsters riding first class that would normally cost tens of thousands of dollars. Meishio then handed her large backpack to the worker so that they could put it on the plane for them. After checking in, Meishio took Yuan to the terminal with their flight. The flight should be here in an hour, she said to Yuan after sitting down. Okay. Time passed slower than usual while they waited for the plane, but it eventually arrived, and they were the first on board due to their first-class ticket. Normally, if one were to ride commercial or even business class, they would only get seats, but for Yuan and Meishio flying first class, they got a whole room to themselves. The room didn't have much space, but it had a bed and a bathroom. Of course, the most important thing was their privacy, as they didn't have to deal with the other passengers. Once they entered their room, Yuan stood up from his wheelchair and stretched his body. It's been a while since I last sat in that position for so long. My body is feeling stiff from it. He sighed. How long is the flight again? Yuan asked Meishio after taking a seat on the bed. 26 hours? It's even longer than Yu Rou's flight? Heavens, we can go back home now if you want? Meishio said in a slightly joking voice. After coming all the way here? I'd rather not. The plane started moving about half an hour after they boarded it. During their flight, Yuan would lay on the bed and read the magazines provided by the plane. Since they were in the air and the plane was quite shaky, it made cultivation very difficult, so they didn't even bother with it. The flight attendants would knock on their door every few hours to provide them with luxurious food that was expected from first class. If they needed anything to drink, they only needed to call the flight attendants back with the press of a button. Obviously, this wasn't Yuan or Meixia's first time flying in an airplane, especially Yuan, who was used to flying all around the world to play the instrument for the Yu family. Eventually, it was time to sleep, but they encountered a problem. There was only one bed in their room. Although the bed was more than enough to fit the both of them, this would be their first time actually sharing a bed. Are you not going to sleep? Yuan asked her as he laid on one side of the bed in a casual manner. You don't mind sharing the bed? Meishio asked. Why would I? Or did you expect me to tell you to sleep on the floor? No. Meishio quickly gave up and got onto the bed with him. Yuan quickly fell asleep, but Meishio was struggling to do so with Yuan being so close to her. Why am I so nervous? Nothing will happen even if we sleep on the same bed, and we have already done things much worse than sharing a bed. Meishio eventually managed to convince herself that it wasn't that much of a deal sharing a bed with Yuan. However, when she woke up the next day, she would find one of Yuan's hands groping her breast. Of course, Yuan was still asleep, being completely unaware of his actions. After her initial shock, Meishio merely shook her head and gently removed his hands from her chest without making a big deal out of it. Yuan woke up shortly afterward. Good morning, Meishio, he said to her. Good morning, she pretended the accident never happened. How long has it been since we left? Yuan asked. Meishiu looked at the time and said, we have another 10 hours. I see. And for the remainder of the last 10 hours, Yuan would practice his divine sense by using it to look around the airplane until he was exhausted and needed to recover. Once he recovered, Yuan would use his divine sense and repeat the next steps. What are they doing inside the bathroom? Yuan accidentally peeked inside the bathroom and found 2 passengers, one male and one female, doing some weird stuff in the bathroom that had barely any space. What are you talking about? Meishiu asked him since he spoke out loud just now. Yuan proceeded to explain what he was witnessing with his divine sense. Meixia's face immediately flushed with redness after hearing the details and realizing what Yuan was watching. Stop watching them. It's rude to intrude on their privacy. Meishiu quickly said to him. Sorry, but I have never seen anything like that before, so I was kind of distracted by it. Yuan retracted his divine sense the next moment, yet the scene head just witnessed was still clear inside his head. Meishiu released a profound sigh afterward, silently hoping to herself that Yuan doesn't ask her for more details about what had just witnessed. Chapter 527, Helicopter Service. Ding. We will be arriving at Yang City in 2 hours. An announcer spoke on the speaker shortly after Yuan stopped using his divine sense. Only 2 hours left, huh? I cannot wait. Yuan laid on the bed, feeling like it's been forever since he last breathed fresh air. And for the last 2 hours, Yuan decided to order the entire menu available on the airplane and indulged himself in their food. 2 hours later, the plane began descending back to the ground. Once they landed, Yuan took a seat in the wheelchair and waited until Meishiu pushed him outside. Thank you for flying with Royal Airlines. The flight attendants bowed to them as they left the airplane and into Yang City's airport. Meishiu then led Yuan outside the airport and into the unknown streets before taking a taxi to the Jaded Garden. Would like to go to the Jaded Garden, Meishiu said to the driver after entering the taxi with Yuan, who immediately turned to look at them with a baffled look on his face. You want to go to the Jaded Garden? The man asked her again for confirmation, almost as though he couldn't believe it. Yes, is there anything wrong with that? The man nodded and said, you won't be able to enter the Jaded Garden in any vehicle that doesn't fly. Despite its name, it's actually in the middle of a mountain valley 8 hours away from Yang City. I can get you close to that place, but I cannot enter the mountain range. Is that so? What should we do? Meishiu asked Yuan. Yuan pondered for a moment before speaking. You said any vehicle that doesn't fly, which means we can take a plane or helicopter there, right? Are there any services that allow us to travel on helicopters? There is one 3 hours away from this place, but it won't be cheap. Can you take us there instead? Yuan said. Sure thing. The fee will be. After paying the driver the fee for the trip, the taxi driver immediately stepped on the pedal and began driving them. About 3 hours later, they arrived at this tall building with multiple agencies working inside. Thanks a bunch. Once they left the taxi, Meishiu entered the building with Yuan still in the wheelchair. Hello, how may I help you? The receptionist waved at them the moment she noticed them. Meishiu approached the receptionist and said, Good morning, I heard there's a helicopter service here? Yes, that's correct. Where are you trying to go? Jade Garden. Jaded Garden, huh? It's not that far away, but due to the high terrains and foggy environment in that place that makes it difficult to traverse even in the air, the price will increase exponentially. If you're okay with that, please fill out this piece of paper and we'll get to you. Meishiu took the paper and looked at its contents that asked for their basic information. What should I do? Should I use an alias? Meishiu asked Yuan for advice. I think you can use my real identity since I am basically a nobody here, Yuan said. Okay. Meishiu then filled out the paper using Yu Tian's identity that has long been forgotten. Furthermore, even if they somehow link Yuan to Yu Tian, they won't be able to find him unless they speak with the Yu family or those that know his identity. Here you go. Meishiu handed the paper back to the receptionist after filling it out. Thank you. Please give me a minute to calculate the price of the trip. Also, will this be a one-way or a round trip? If you choose a round trip, we will land and stay at a certain location until you return. However, you'll have to pay a certain fee for every single day we wait. We'll do a round trip. If we no longer need the service, can we cancel the round trip? Meishiu asked. Of course, but you'll still have to pay the fee depending on how many days you made the pilot wait regardless if you return or not. That sounds good. Meishiu nodded. The receptionist then took a couple of minutes to calculate the cost. The total amount will cost $50,000 for a round trip, not including the waiting time. The waiting fee will be $1,000 for every 24 hours we wait at that location. Here. Meishio placed their debit card on the desk without any hesitation despite the ride costing a whopping $50,000. Clearly, that amount of money wasn't enough to make her even raise an eyebrow. The receptionist gladly accepted their card and charged them $50,000. I have notified the pilot of your ride. It should be ready within 2 hours. Please wait in the guest room until then. It's that room over there. The receptionist pointed to the room at the end of the hall. Meishio and Yuan proceeded to wait inside the guest room until their ride was ready. A little over 2 hours later, the receptionist knocked on the door before entering their room with a blond middle-aged man wearing a uniform. Hello, esteemed guests. Your ride is ready and he will be your pilot. The middle-aged man greeted them with a smile on his face. My name is Jean. I have over 20 years of experience, and I have traveled to the Jaded Garden over 100 times in my career without a single accident, so you can rely on me. Meishio and Yuan then followed the pilot to the back of the building, where there was a large empty field alongside a couple of helicopters idling inside a hangar. The helicopter they were going to ride was already prepared and was waiting for them to board in the middle of the track. After boarding the helicopter, the pilot took a few minutes to explain some rules to them. Do you guys have experience with helicopters? Jean asked them after explaining the rules. Yes, we do. Meishio nodded. I figured. Then let's go. We should arrive at the Jaded Garden in an hour. Jean said as he operated the helicopter, taking them into the air. Chapter 528, Jaded Garden? Mister, you mentioned that you'd traveled to the Jaded Garden multiple times, right? Do you know the families that live there such as the Wang family? Can you tell us a little about that place as well? Yuan asked the pilot as they traveled in the air. Of course. The Jaded Garden is a unique place that's home to the 6 spiritual families, and the Wang family is one of these families. The 6 spirit families is an alliance of sorts between 6 separate powerful families, but not much is known about them, as they have only revealed themselves recently, quickly becoming powerhouses within the cultivation world. In fact, the Jaded Garden used to be a secluded area, but ever since cultivation became known to the world, they began opening their doors to outsiders, even taking some people in as disciples. Is this why you're traveling to that place? Jean asked them. Something like that. Yuan nodded. Well, good luck. It won't be easy joining their faction. From what I've heard, they have many cultivation geniuses that have already reached Spirit Warrior within their background, but I don't know whether that information is true or fake, and it's quite hard to believe that there are already people that have reached Spirit Warrior. Many Spirit Warriors? Yuan mumbled. If they'd known about cultivation for hundreds of years now, it wouldn't be weird if they had Spirit Warriors, and even Spirit Master was possible as they'd already proved to him. In fact, it would be weird if they didn't. About half an hour later, they arrived before a mountain valley that was enveloped in thick fog. Can you even navigate inside such a thick fog? Meishio asked when she saw the fog in the distance. Yes, it'll be fine. It's only foggy at the entrance and high altitudes which we must travel because of the tall mountains. Once we pass the mountain we can start to descend into the valley where there isn't as much fog. As for the navigating through the fog, we have an autopilot system prepared just for this, allowing the helicopter to autopilot itself through the fog at a predetermined path, Jean explained to them. I see. Meishio nodded. And just like Head said, Jean made the helicopter go into autopiloting mode once they reached the fog. After another half an hour they could feel the helicopter descending towards the ground. A few moments later, their helicopter emerged from the fog and entered a vast but clear plain in the middle of a mountain valley. We have safely entered the Jaded Garden. We will arrive at the landing site in 10 minutes. Jean said to them as he regained control over the helicopter. Although he could have continued to let the helicopter fly on autopilot, he enjoyed controlling the helicopter personally. 10 minutes later, the helicopter landed in a spacious land that had a couple of helicopters that belonged to others parked. Here's my phone number. Call me if you need anything. Jean handed Meishio a business card that had his name and phone number. Also, I can only stay here for 30 days maximum before I have to return to the agency. If you stay longer than that but still wish to return with me, you'll have to purchase another ride with the agency including the waiting fee. Jean warned them. As for where I will stay, Jean pointed to a building a few hundred meters in the distance and said, I will be there if you cannot call me for any reason. I understand. Meishio nodded. Before they left, Yuan asked Jean, "Mister, can I leave my wheelchair here in the helicopter?" "I don't mind." Jean nodded his head, but he was definitely taken by surprise by Yuan's question. After all, why would someone who had to travel in a wheelchair leave it behind? Does he intend on letting the young lady carry him the whole time? "Thanks." Yuan then stood up from the wheelchair without any effort before folding it and putting it inside the helicopter, leaving Jean dumbfounded. "By the way, which direction do we go?" Meishio then asked, as she couldn't see any cities or buildings beside the one Jean pointed to in the area. "It's 3 miles that way." Jean pointed in a certain direction and he continued, "Unfortunately, there are no taxi services in this area, so you'll have to walk there." "That's fine. Let's go," Yuan said. Meishio and Yuan then quickly left the scene, and since they weren't in a hurry, they walked very slowly, quietly enjoying the environment and fresh air. "I have never smelt such fresh air before," Yuan said after he took a few deep breaths. "Yes, this place has very clean and high-quality air. Every single breath I take makes me feel cleaner inside." Meishio agreed with him. After walking for an hour, Meishio could finally see some tall buildings in the distance. "We're almost there," she said to Yuan since he couldn't see that far with his divine sense. "Here you go." She then handed Yuan his black mask before wearing one herself. A couple more minutes later, they arrived before a large gate where a few guards stood. The guards quickly noticed their presence and one of them said, "That person is wearing a black mask. Do you think he's the person Senior Wang warned us about?" "What was his name again?" "His name is Yuan," said another. They were clearly instructed to be on the lookout for a person wearing a mask. Sometime later, Yuan and Meishio finally arrived before these guards. "Hello, is there a Yuan amongst you too?" one of the guards asked them. "That's right. I am Yuan." Yuan responded in a calm voice. "I understand. Please wait for a minute. We have already sent someone to notify Senior Wang. She should be here shortly." "Okay." Yuan nodded, and they proceeded to wait some more until the guard that left to find Senior Wang returned to the site with her beside him. Chapter 529, Spiritual Elites. "Thank you for taking your time to come to our Jaded garden, Yuan." Senior Wang bowed to him in a respectful manner despite their difference in age. In the world of cultivation, one's strength and ability were more valued than one's age, so one must respect the other if they were stronger regardless of their ages. If it weren't for the fact that they were at the same cultivation level, she would have addressed Yuan as Senior Yuan. The guards didn't know that Yuan was also a spirit master like Senior Wang, so her actions left them dumbfounded for a good moment, as they have never seen her act so respectful towards a junior. "I am here because I want to know more about cultivation, and your background," Yuan spoke in a calm voice. "Of course. That's why we requested for your presence." Senior Wang nodded. "Please follow me." They then followed Senior Wang inside the gates. "The others aren't aware of your presence yet, so allow us some time to prepare," Senior Wang said to them as they walked. "What is this place?" Yuan asked her. Although he learned a little about the Jaded Garden from the pilot, he wanted to hear about it from someone who lives here. The Jaded Garden is a special place created by the 6 spiritual families where our branches live in harmony as proof of our alliance. However, that isn't the main reason we created this place. The Jaded Garden is actually a training spot for the 6 spiritual families where we send our juniors to learn about cultivation and become cultivators. It used to be a secluded area for many centuries, but now that cultivation is known to the entire world, we decided to open up this place and use it as the headquarters for our new cultivation faction known as the Spiritual Elites. Spiritual Elites? Yuan repeated in a muttering voice. And he asked, "What are the requirements to join the faction?" Senior Wang smiled and said, "Are you interested? If you want to join, we'll accept you right away." "That wasn't my intention," Yuan quickly responded. "Too bad. Maybe we can change your mind later. Anyways, we only have 2 requirements for those who want to join our faction. 1, you must be under the age of 21. And lastly, you must be at the very least at the 8th level of Spirit Apprentice. 8th level Spirit Apprentice below the age of 21? So everyone above the age of 21 will be automatically disqualified regardless of their cultivation levels? That isn't very fair since the majority of people in this world have only started cultivating a couple of months ago," Meishio said. "That is correct, as we only want young people with potential. Even if you're extremely talented, if you start cultivating at the age of 21, you will not achieve as much as someone who has inferior talents but started cultivating at a much younger age," Senior Wang responded. And she continued, for example, between two individuals, one who started cultivating at the age of 10 and one who started at the age of 21. The person who started at the age of 10 will have 11 years of experience by the time he's 21 and will generally achieve more in his life than the person who started at 21 years old. One might argue that the gap doesn't really matter if the person who started cultivating at the age of 21 had immense talents that allowed him to ignore his setback, but these people are too few and far in between. However, if someone like that does exist, we could simply make an exception for them. Senior Wang's gaze glanced at Yuan for a brief moment when she said that sentence. By the way, this place has existed for over 500 years. 500 years? Just how long have you guys known about cultivation? Yuan couldn't help but ask. I can't tell you the exact date since we also don't know, but let's just say we've known about cultivation since we can remember. Senior Wang said. I see. What's the highest cultivation someone has achieved? Yuan then asked. Spirit Master, she quickly responded. Even the most talented genius within the 6 spiritual families has only achieved the 3rd level Spirit Master before he perished. I don't think it's possible to reach any higher due to the lack of qi in this world and a lack of good techniques. The existence of cultivation online might change that since we'll be able to acquire better cultivation techniques, but that won't fix the issue with the lack of qi. Anyways, we are here. Please wait a bit for me to gather the others. Senior Wang said as they arrived before a large pond that had a couple of buildings built on top of the water. This reminded Yuan of the Dragon Pavilion inside the Dragon Essence Temple. Senior Wang then led Yuan and Meishio to the largest pavilion there. Once Yuan and Meishio sat down around a large round table made of marble, Senior Wang said, I will now gather the others. Senior Wang left the scene shortly after, leaving the two of them alone in this place. What do you think? Yuan suddenly asked. What do you mean? What do you think of this place and Senior Wang? Can we trust them? Meishio pondered for a moment before speaking. I don't know, that Senior Wang seemed pretty respectful and friendly, but we can never be too careful. Yuan nodded and said, I think so too. Anyways, while I am Yuan, I will be acting a little different than usual to not give away my identity and to make sure they take me seriously, and I kinda gave myself a serious and unfriendly image at the Cultivators Association. I kind of figured since you felt a little different than normal since we have arrived at this place, Meishio said. And she added, I will also try to act differently. About 15 minutes later, Senior Wang returned to the lake with 5 other individuals, all of them with an elderly appearance. Chapter 530, 6 Spiritual Families. That's Player Yuan? What an unfathomable aura. I can feel it even this far away. One of the seniors there spoke in a low voice as they approached the lake. I didn't believe when you told me that he was a spirit master, but now that I am seeing him personally, heavens, do you think he's from a secluded family? I don't want to believe that Head managed to achieve that level after was introduced. Another one said. We'll find out in just a moment. A few moments later, Senior Wang and the 5 seniors stood in front of Yuan and Meishio on the other side of the table, and they started introducing themselves. Once again, I am surnamed Wang from the Wang family, from one of the 6 spiritual families, and I am a Grand Elder. I am surnamed Wu from the Wu family. I believe we have met at the Cultivators Association as well. Surnamed Shi, and we have also met at the Cultivators Association. My surname is Li, surnamed Shi. And my surname is Hong. Yuan stood up and said in a calm voice, My name is Yuan and this is my caretaker. Meishio stood up and said, surnamed Feng. Since Yuan gave himself an alias, Meishio decided to do the same, especially since her recent incident that made her name public, and she picked Feng Yuxiang's surname as her alias. Allow us to welcome you to the Jaded Garden once again, Yuan. Whether you believe it or not, your presence here means a great deal to us. Senior Wang said to him with a respectful bow by clasping her hands together. The other elders did the same. A moment later, they all sat around the marble table. There's a lot to talk about, but let us start with our background, Senior Wang said. And she continued, the 6 spiritual families have existed for thousands of years, but we were not always this peaceful with each other. In fact, we used to be at war with each other until 300 years ago. Senior Wu then continued, however, there was one thing we all agreed upon even during our times of war, and that was to keep the existence of cultivation a secret. Thus, we have managed to keep cultivation a secret from the public while silently cultivating ourselves. Senior Ji then said, that's the purpose of this place, to train our juniors together. It's like a sect, the same ones you see in but we're much smaller. If you'd like, we can even show you around the place afterward. I'd like that, Yuan said as he was curious what a modern-day sect would look like and how it compared to the sects within. The elders continued to spend a couple more minutes talking about their family's history before one of them asked, Yuan, can you tell us a little more about yourself? If you want to keep your identity hidden, that's perfectly fine. What about your cultivation level? When did you start cultivating? He nodded and said, as you already know, I am a spirit master, but I only recently achieved this level. As for how long I have been cultivating, shortly after I began playing cultivation online, I guess. Aya? The elders there suddenly released stressful sighs, and all of them held a defeated expression on their faces for some reason. I was hoping you'd started cultivating many years ago so we don't look as bad before your talents, but alas, you have managed to achieve Spirit Master in less than a year while it took all of us over 100 years to reach Spirit Master. The difference is like heaven and hell. No, it's incomparable. One of the elders there expressed his distress. Why is there such injustice under this heavens? Another sighed. After a few moments of contemplating their lives, the elders eventually gave up and said, do you want to take a look around the place? Sure, he nodded. Although the elders wanted to ask more questions about him, they didn't dare to ask them as they were afraid of offending him. After all, it was clear to them that Yuan wanted to keep his identity a secret, and as people who have kept cultivation from the world for centuries, they knew very well what Yuan was feeling and his thoughts, so they purposefully avoided asking him questions that could reveal his identity. Furthermore, they believed that if they earned his trust, there was a good chance that he would reveal his identity willingly. Until then, they will have to approach him with caution. Yuan's talent that allowed him to reach Spirit Master in less than a year was something incomprehensible for these elders that used to be the top genius within their generation. What do you think of the cultivation world this far? Senior Wang asked him as they walked around him like a group of grandparents and their grandchildren. Although it has its flaws, I genuinely enjoy the cultivation world within Cultivation Online, but whether cultivation is a good thing or a bad thing for this world, I still don't know yet, he calmly responded. I agree. Everything was fine before since there were only very few of us that knew about cultivation if you consider the world's population, but now that everyone is aware of cultivation, I fear what might happen in the future. This is also why we opened up the Jaded Garden to the public to attract talents, because we fear the future and want to prepare ourselves before it's too late. What do you mean? Yuan asked her, his interest piqued. You see, inside an ancient scroll left behind by our ancestors, there is a prophecy that when the world starts cultivation, there will be a calamity. A calamity? Yuan raised his eyebrows behind the mask as did Meishio. Yes, a calamity will befall upon this world, propelling this world into chaos. Senior Wang said in a sighing voice. This is another reason why we decided to keep cultivation a secret from the world. If you want, I can show you the scroll after the tour. Okay, he quickly said. Chapter 531, Underrated? Hey look, it's the Grand Elders. Who are those two masked individuals with them? The people there quickly took notice of their presence, as the Grand Elders were incredibly influential and powerful people there. I have never seen them before. Me neither. They must be very important if they are being guided by the Grand Elders. While the disciples there tried to guess the identity of these two masked individuals, the Grand Elders led Yuan and Meishio around the Jaded Garden. This right here is the training hall. They first stopped before a large building and explained, this is where the disciples are lectured and taught how to wield their weapons and cultivate. In other words, it's where they are taught how to fight. Although we don't really use our combat experience in the outside world, we often spar with each other so that we won't be powerless when we need to fight. It is also one of the most populated places in the entire Jaded Garden due to its purposes. The Grand Elders then led Yuan and Meishio inside this building that had many floors. The first and second floor is dedicated to disciples who wish to learn the sword. Senior Wang said as she opened the door to a spacious gymnasium where hundreds of disciples could be seen practicing their sword techniques. The sword is the most popular weapon for cultivators due to its ease of use and its destructive prowess. That's why we have two entire floors dedicated to the sword. Yuan used his divine sense to watch a few of these disciples practicing their sword techniques. Then he noticed something, that their swords were enveloped by a thin layer of spiritual energy. They're using sword techniques? Are these techniques from or something from your families? Yuan decided to ask them. These sword techniques came from Wu family since it's their specialty, said Senior Wang. I see. If you'd like to learn the technique, you can join our faction and we'll let you learn as many techniques as you want, and we have over 20 different techniques combined, she said with a smile on her face. I will consider it, he said. Sometime later they skipped the second floor since it was the same as the first floor and went straight to the third floor. This floor is dedicated to disciples who wish to learn the spear and polearm, basically long-ranged melee weapons. The Shi family and Shi family are in charge of this floor since they're both experts with long-range weapons. Yuan silently watched the disciples practice this unfamiliar weapon for the next few minutes, as he has only fought very few opponents who use spears and polearms. The most notable fight he had with a long-range weapon was within the ancient dragon city when he had to fight many experts. 10 minutes later they went to the fourth floor. This floor is dedicated to archery. It's a unique and underrated weapon in the cultivation world, and in our modern world they are usually used as a sport. A bow, huh? Now that you mention it, I don't think I have ever seen a bow wielder inside cultivation online. Why do you think they are so underrated? Yuan asked her. Well, for one, you have to aim using the bow and people would rather use something more convenient such as sword since you only need to swing it. Secondly, it requires much more skills and training to fully master the bow. Third, in the cultivation world where most people fight close quarters, you won't be able to use the bow efficiently unless you gain distance from your opponent, which is easier said than done. There are more reasons why people don't use the bow, but these are the main reasons. However, even if the weapon is underrated, it is by no means weak. Once you put the time to master the bow and how to fight with it, it could become an unstoppable weapon, and it would only become even more powerful if you have a partner that can protect you while you fight in the back. The bow can quickly become a nuisance and untouchable in the right situation and the right hands. Meishio silently listened to Senior Wang talk about the bow. Although Shed intended on using her bare hands in cultivation online, she was starting to have thought about using the bow, as this will allow her to support Yuan from the rear without getting in his way. And with Yuan in front of her, she was confident that nobody will be able to get to her while she abuses their opponents from a distance. However, there was one issue, and that was she didn't have any experience with the bow. Although she has plenty of experience with a gun, she had zero when it comes to the bow. Twang. The sound of strings trembling would constantly resound in the room as a little under 100 disciples practiced their aiming skills on their targets. A couple of minutes later they made their way to the fifth floor. The fifth and sixth floor is the last two floors to this tower, and they are both dedicated to cultivation since the bottom floors are usually the loudest. We also have private cultivation rooms that are completely soundproof just in case. There isn't anything fancy like formations in this place, but this place is mostly for ordinary disciples. Elite disciples and us elders usually cultivate at the Immortal Caves, where the spiritual energy is much denser. There are immortal caves in this world? Yuan was truly surprised to hear this. Do you want to see them later? Senior Wang asked him with a profound glint in her gaze. She knew that this could potentially convince him to join their faction. Of course, he quickly nodded. Then let's make our way to the sparring area. It's on the way to the Immortal Caves. Senior Wang said, and they left the building shortly after. Chapter 532, A Friendly Exchange. After leaving the training area, the Grand Elders led Yuan and Meishio to the sparring area that was an open field with multiple stages available, and there was even a spectators area. When they arrived at the sparring area, they could see a couple of disciples sparring with each other on the stages, but all of them were fighting without any weapons. Most disciples come here for training and experience, but it's also very common for disciples with grievances to come here to release their stress or simply to settle things. Although they get out of hand sometimes, killing or serious injuries that could cripple another are not allowed, or they will be crippled and be forced to work as a servant in one of the 6 spiritual families. Senior Shi explained to them. Of course, since we risk them revealing the existence of cultivation to the world, we cannot allow them to simply leave the family, so they can either choose to work as a servant or be killed. To be a servant or to be killed. Yuan mumbled in a low voice. Then he asked, others can also leak this information, so does this mean that disciples are not allowed to communicate with the outside world? You are correct. Most of us live a secluded lifestyle, and when we go outside, we are only allowed to communicate with the other cultivation families. Though, trusted individuals and high-ranking elders such as ourselves are allowed to communicate with the mortal world. Yuan sighed inwardly after learning about their secluded lifestyle. He couldn't imagine living such a boring life, where you can only communicate with those around you, but fortunately for them, they had other families to keep each other accompanied. However, compared to the majority of his life, where he was secluded within his own room for many years with barely any interaction with others, it was still much better. After watching the disciples spar for a couple of minutes, one of the Grand Elders suddenly said, "Fellow Taoist Yuan, if it isn't too much to ask, can I request for a friendly exchange with you?" Yuan turned to look at the old man who just asked this question and said in a calm voice, "You want to spar with me?" "Yes." The old man confirmed. "You can't be serious right now, Elder Shi." Senior Wang said with a slight frown on her face. "I don't mind," Yuan suddenly said. He then continued, "However, I will only be dodging your attacks if you don't mind." "Only dodging?" Elder Shi raised his eyebrows in a puzzled manner. "Yes, you can attack me as you like, and if you manage to hit me even once, I will consider it my loss." Yuan nodded. There were a few reasons as to why Yuan made this suggestion, but the biggest reason as to why he would only be dodging is simply because he has zero experience in fighting in his current body. Although he has plenty of experience in cultivation online, things were different in this world and he didn't have his sword with him. Furthermore, he wanted to test out the movement technique that had been practicing for the past month and see how effective it was against the top cultivators of this world. "Good luck, Yuan," Meishio said to him before they entered the stage. Elder Zai's presence quickly attracted everyone's attention within the sparring area. "Look, Elder Shi is going onto the stage. Is he going to spar with that masked person? Who is that individual? Does anyone know?" The people there quickly surrounded the stage with Elder Shi and Yuan. "Whenever you're ready," Elder Shi said to Yuan as they stood a couple of meters away from each other. "Attack me whenever you're ready," Yuan then said. "Then here I come." Elder Shi immediately rushed forward with incredible speed, arriving before Yuan a second later. However, Yuan remained standing there without moving a single muscle. The spectators thought that was because he couldn't react to Elder Zai's speed, but they quickly realized how wrong they were when Yuan barely dodged Elder Zai's attack right before the strike landed. Elder Shi wasn't too surprised that his attack had been avoided since he was just testing Yuan, so he continued to throw his hands at Yuan, using basic martial arts. This guy. What a fearsome movement technique. Elder Shi soon realized that Yuan would always barely avoid his attacks, meaning that Yuan was purposefully minimizing his movements to dodge flawless while saving himself energy at the same time. Wow. Look at that masked person's movements. They are so profound. I have never seen anything like that before. Heavens! Where did he learn such a technique? This continued for over half an hour with Elder Shi being unable to touch even Yuan's clothes, much less the person himself. Elder Shi eventually stopped moving and said, "I give up. You win this one, fellow Taoist Yuan." What? Did Elder Shi just called him Yuan? Could he be that famous player Yuan? What's he doing here? When the spectators heard Elder Shi addressing Yuan by his name, they all expressed great shock. However, if they thought about it, it made sense since only player Yuan could possibly be powerful enough to defeat their Grand Elder. "You have me completely beaten without attacking me. I cannot imagine winning if you're allowed to attack." Elder Shi bowed to him afterward, not feeling bitter despite losing since he was well aware of their disparity. "Thank you for the spar as well, it was a good experience." Yuan copied his movements and returned the bow. The other Grand Elders were speechless. Although Elder Shi and Yuan were both spirit masters, one had decades more experience than the other, yet Elder Shi couldn't even touch Yuan's shadow after 30 minutes of trying? Just what kind of movement technique was he using? "Let's head to the Immortal Caves now, shall we?" Yuan said to the Grand Elders a moment later, snapping them out of their daze. "All right, let's go." Senior Wang nodded her head, and they proceeded to leave the area shortly after. After they left, the spectators immediately began spreading news of player Yuan's presence within the Jaded Garden that spread like wildfire. Chapter 533, Trial Disciple. What? Player Yuan is currently in the Jaded Garden? How is that possible? I'm serious. I witnessed him spar with Elder Shi and win. He was even wearing his signature black mask. But why would player Yuan come here? Maybe he wants to join this faction? That would be incredible if that was true. Imagine being in the same faction as player Yuan. Well, become an unstoppable force. The disciples of spiritual elites were both baffled and excited by the news, and all of them wanted to meet player Yuan for themselves, but that was much easier said than done, as he was currently being escorted by all 6 Grand Elders. If they bother them, they would risk getting kicked out of the faction. "Welcome to our immortal caves, Taoist Yuan. Senior," she said to him as they approached this small mountain that had a couple of cave entrances around it. Yuan took a deep breath, sucking in the fresh qi from the place. "You're right. This place has an incredible amount of spiritual energy," Yuan said to them. "Let me show you inside the immortal caves," Senior Wang said as she approached one of the cave entrances. Yuan followed her, and the closer they got to the cave, the stronger the spiritual energy became. "Wow, this is an immortal cave?" Yuan was speechless upon seeing the decoration inside that was the opposite of his expectations. Had expected the place to be a gloomy cave with nothing but rocks, but to his surprise, there was an entire room filled with furniture inside the immortal cave. And there was even a door. "This is a modern-day immortal cave," Senior Wang said with a smile on her face. "You probably expected something more boring, but cultivators in our day and age cultivate better in this kind of environment," Senior Wang said with a smile on her face. "Look, there is even a bathroom in here." After showing Yuan around the place, Senior Wang said, "If you join us, we can give you one of these immortal caves. Normally, only Grand Elders and the family heads are allowed to stay inside an immortal cave permanently, but we will make this an exception for you." "I will consider it," Yuan said. Senior Wang began pondering when she heard his voice that carried a hint of disinterest. "How about this, Taoist Yuan? You can stay here for a month, or even a week as a disciple. You will gain access to the immortal caves and some of our techniques as if you are an official disciple, but you have no obligations to join us. And once your time as a trial disciple is over, you can decide whether you want to join us or not." "A trial disciple?" Yuan raised his eyebrows. He didn't think they'd go this far just to invite him into their faction. "What if I learn all of your techniques and decide not to join?" Yuan then asked. "Of course, we have already considered this possibility, and we're willing to take the risks." Senior Wang said, as the Grand Elders have spoken about this matter way before Yuan even arrived. Furthermore, while she didn't say it, she didn't believe that Yuan would be able to learn their techniques so quickly. While Yuan's cultivation speed is, without a doubt, heaven-defying, that didn't mean he was also as talented when it comes to comprehension. Most of their disciples needed many months to learn a single technique, and even their top geniuses required at least a week to learn a new technique. "What do you think?" Yuan turned to ask Meishio. "I don't really care. Do as you wish," she calmly responded. Yuan pondered for a moment before nodding his head. "All right, well, stay here for a week. After all, it would be a shame if I left so quickly after traveling so much." "Great. Then starting today you will be part of our spiritual elites. Well, get your uniforms later, but if you don't want them, just let me know." "It's okay, we have our own clothes," Yuan said. Although he agreed to join their faction temporarily, he didn't want to accept their uniform since that would make him look too much like an official disciple and could even potentially create some misunderstandings. Sometime later, they left the Immortal Caves and Senior Wang spoke with the other Grand Elders regarding Yuan's decision to join the faction as a trial disciple. Of course, the Grand Elders were very ecstatic to hear this. Even if Yuan was only a trial disciple and he decides to leave in a week, they will still have a connection with him at the very least. "Taoist Yuan, which immortal cave would you like to use for your time here?" Elder, she asked him. "I don't really care. Whichever one is available, I guess. The immortal cave I just showed you isn't occupied by anyone at the moment. You can use that one if you like," Senior Wang said. "Okay." Yuan nodded. Senior Wang then retrieved a jade medallion from her clothes before offering it to Yuan. "Take this. If you run into any trouble within the Jade Garden, you can use this medallion. Only those approved by the Grand Elders are allowed to carry this, and anyone that dares to challenge the medallion means they're challenging us, the Grand Elders." Yuan accepted the medallion without any hesitation. "Then we will leave you alone now. If you need anything from us, you can find us at our family living quarters. Only family members are allowed to approach these living quarters, but you will be fine as long as you have the medallion on you," Senior Wang said. "Once again, you may be a trial disciple, but you will have access to things that even normal disciples cannot reach. I hope you will enjoy your stay here." "Thank you." Yuan nodded. The Grand Elders left the scene shortly after, leaving Yuan and Meishio alone. "Why did you agree to stay here?" Meishio suddenly asked him. During my spar with Elder Shi, I realized that I don't have any combat experience in this body, so I want to acquire some of that experience in this place. After all, I cannot dodge forever, and there are a lot of interesting things that I want to try out in this place, he said. Chapter 534, Training? Experience, huh? I agree. Meishio nodded. Ichim? Are you also interested in something from this place? Yuan asked her. Yes, I want to try out archery, she responded. Archery? That's unexpected. I know, but I think it will be useful one day, she said. And she continued, what about you? It has to be the sword, right? Yes, but that's not all I want to do. I also want to try out the other weapons such as the spear and the rod. After all, the more I understand these weapons, the easier it will be for me when I have to fight opponents using these weapons. That makes sense. Meishio nodded. Sometime later they entered the Immortal cave and unpacked their luggage. Once that was all done, they made their way back to the training area. I'll look at that person wearing the black mask. Isn't that player Yuan? The disciples around them quickly took notice of their presence due to their unique appearance. Is that really player Yuan? What if he's an imposter? There are plenty of people like him out there. In fact, anyone can claim to be player Yuan by wearing a mask. Although some people stared at Yuan in awe, there were also those that doubted his identity. After all, player Yuan was an incredibly mysterious individual whose identity isn't known by seemingly anyone. Furthermore, there have been far too many people faking to be player Yuan, too many to count, and most of them do it to gain fame or simply to obtain gifts from others, as everyone was seemingly trying to curry favors with player Yuan, hoping to learn his identity. Of course, due to how common fake player Yuans were, it was only logical for people to suspect the current player Yuan. But didn't he fight against Elder Shi and win? Who could possibly defeat a Grand Elder besides player Yuan? Another disciple asked. As if you can call that spar a fight. Elder Shi wasn't even using his full strength, and that person had been dodging the entire time. You cannot call that a fight. It was more of a performance than anything. Sometime later, Yuan and Meishio arrived at the training building. Yuan went straight into one of the sword training rooms and asked the instructor there, "Can I borrow a sword? I'd like to train with it." "You want to practice with the sword?" The instructor was baffled by his request. After snapping out of his daze, the instructor pointed to the side of the room where a couple of weapon shelves holding swords were located and said, "Go ahead. Most of them are wooden swords with metal as its interior, so it feels like a real sword. If you want a real sword, you'll need permission from the Grand Elders." "I understand." Yuan nodded and proceeded to walk over to the shelves before picking a sword randomly. "Wow, this thing does feel pretty heavy. I am not used to feeling this much weight," he said after picking it up and swinging it around a couple of times. "But you wield an even larger sword in Cultivation Online," Meishio said with her eyebrows raised. "The sword may be big and it may seem heavy, but it actually weighs almost to nothing for me since I am its master," he said. After picking up the sword and getting comfortable with it, Yuan said to Meishio, "Can you bring me to a spacious area that doesn't have many people?" Since he couldn't see the entire gymnasium even with his divine sense, he asked for her help. Meishio looked around the place before saying, "Follow me." Yuan then followed her. The gymnasium was incredibly big enough for them to walk a couple of minutes without stopping. Once they stopped, Yuan used his divine sense to make sure there wasn't anyone around them. "Stand back a little. I don't want to hurt you by accident," Yuan said to Meishio. Meishio nodded and took a couple of steps back until she was many meters away from him. Once he was alone, Yuan took a deep breath and recalled his experience in Cultivation Online. Although his body wasn't the same, his memories and experience within Cultivation Online were real. After standing there for a few minutes without doing anything, Yuan began moving his body, calmly swinging his sword around. Each of his swings was incredibly precise and powerful. The other disciples in the gymnasium could see a small arc of wind appearing in front of Yuan every time he swung the sword, causing them to suck in a breath of cold air, as none of them could replicate such a phenomenon. Impressive. The instructor also watched Yuan practice his sword swings with awe. Although there were no sword techniques behind Yuan's sword swings, his sword still emitted a profound aura, and every swing left a deep impression on the disciples there. Yuan proceeded to practice with his sword for the next hour without any disruptions. Sometime later, Yuan stopped swinging the sword and turned to look at Meishio, who looked a little bored. "Meishio, you can go practice archery if you're bored of watching me." Are you sure? Meishio asked him. Yes, I will probably be here for a while working up a sweat. I will find you when I am done if you're not finished by then, he confirmed. Okay. I will see you later. Meishio nodded and made her way to the 4th floor, where the disciples were practicing archery. Once she entered the room, Meishio looked around until she found someone who looked like the instructor and walked up to her. Hello, I'd like to try archery, Meishio said to her. Oh? The middle-aged woman turned to look at Meishio, who was wearing a black mask. Are you with? Meishio nodded. Yes, I am. Have you used a bow before? The bow instructor then asked. No, I have not. That's perfectly fine. Follow me to an open aisle. I will teach you the basics. The instructor said with a friendly smile on her face. Thank you. Meishio then followed her. Chapter 535, Archery. Here, watch my hands. This is how you properly hold a bow. The instructor showed Meishio how to hold a bow. Meishio then followed her hand motions and gripped onto the bow. Good, now you bring it up like this and hold it here. Meishio followed her again. Good. Now grab an arrow with your other hand and hold it like this. Then you put it in this position on the bow. A few minutes later, the instructor said, Good. Now that you know the basics, you need to familiarize yourself with them. Spend a few more minutes repeating the motion of lifting your bow and putting the arrow into the bow. Once you're ready to head into the next step, we can learn how to draw the bow and then shoot the bow. Meishio proceeded to spend about 15 minutes repeating what she had learned thus far. Once she was comfortable with holding the bow, the instructor taught her how to pull the strings back in her body position while doing so. Now all you have to do is release the string, but make sure you don't make any random movements. Simply release your fingers and let the bow do the rest of the work. Meishio followed her instructions and released the arrow, sending it flying towards the target that was 50 meters away from them. Whoosh! The arrow flew straight over the target and went straight into the wall that was reinforced with special material to catch arrows without damaging them. Nice try, but your movements were great. Now you just need to aim and hit the target. Give it a couple more tries. Meishio continued to shoot the bow afterward, and by her 3rd try she was able to hit the target in the outer areas. On her 4th and 5th shots, she got closer and closer to the red circle in the middle of the target. On her 6th shot, her arrow barely missed the red. Finally, only her 7th shot, Meishio managed to hit the red circle dead in its center. Not bad. The instructor said, thinking that it was merely luck. However, Meishio continued to shoot, and on her 8th, 9th and 10th shot, she struck nothing but red, dumbfounding the instructor. Are you sure this is your first time using the bow? You're very precise. The instructor eventually said, doubting that this was her first time using the bow. Meishio then said, Yes, this is definitely my first time. Though this isn't my first time shooting at targets with a weapon since I have experience with guns. G-guns? The instructor was left speechless by her words. She knew that Meishio was a young lady by her voice, but what kind of young lady would have experience shooting guns? However, if she thought about it a little more, Meishio was Player Yuan's caretaker. It must require extreme skill and talents to take care of someone like Player Yuan, so it sort of made sense. Meishio proceeded to shoot a couple more arrows at the target, and after a dozen shots, she had managed to hit 11 of them in the red with one barely missing it. It was clear to the instructor that Meishio was very talented when it came to using the bow. Meishio also felt that using the bow was much easier than she had anticipated. However, she felt that hitting a still target was too boring. Excuse me, do you have any moving targets that I can practice on? Meishio suddenly asked the instructor. Yes, we do. Follow me. The instructor then led Meishio into another room that was on the same floor. Inside this room that looked a little similar to a firing range, there were a couple of puppets made of straw moving in a set path at the end of the room. How's this? The instructor asked her. This is perfect. Meishio then looked for an available aisle before practicing on the moving targets. She missed her first shot, but she immediately fixed it on her second shot, and on her third shot, she had managed to hit the human-shaped puppet in the head. Who's that masked figure? The instructor inside this room asked the instructor that came with Meishio. That's Player Yuan's caretaker. I'm sure you've heard of them by now. Player Yuan's caretaker? No wonder why she's in that getup. But heavens, she's very good at the bow. You probably won't believe me when I say this, but today is her first time using the bow, and she started only an hour ago. What? How is that possible? The instructor smiled and said, I asked her the same thing and she told me that she was used to hitting targets with guns and that archery was similar. And you believe her? There's no reason why she'd lie about such a thing. And the way she handled the bow at first convinced me that she's definitely new to the bow. So not only Player Yuan is an amazing individual, but even his caretakers are geniuses? Just what kind of household does he come from? Who knows? A few minutes later, the instructors approached Meishio and said to her, if you're already accustomed to the moving targets, you can try adjusting it using these buttons. You can not only increase the speed they're moving but also the distance. Once you're bored of this place, I can show you the outdoor training area. There's an outdoor training area? Meishio was interested in this place. Yes. You'll have more room to move around there so you can practice moving and shooting at the same time, said the instructor. Just let this instructor know when you want to go. I will return to the other room for now. Okay. The first instructor returned to her training room shortly after, leaving Meishio and her new instructor behind. Meishio continued practicing her archery skills that were improving at a tremendous rate, and she would remain in that room for another hour and a half before making her way to the outdoor training area with the instructor. Chapter 536, Avoiding and Attacking Simultaneously. This is the outdoor training area, the instructor said to Meishio. Meishio looked around and she could see disciples practicing things other than archery there, but they were very far in the distance so they don't disturb each other. She then looked at the disciples practicing archery, and they were running around doing complicated maneuvers while shooting their bow at the same time. If you thought archery was as simple as standing still and shooting your targets, you are gravely mistaken. The instructor suddenly said, and she continued, as an archer, you must not only be precise but also nimble so that you don't get caught in the enemy's attacks. Watch this. The instructor then called out to one of the disciples practicing and said, Disciple Jing, we're going to do a quick practice. Yes, instructor. The instructor then approached the disciple and stood a few meters away from her, who still had a bow in her hands. Whenever you're ready, the instructor said to her. The disciple then took on an offensive pose and stared at the instructor with an intensive gaze. The next second, the instructor leaped forward and attacked the disciple, but the disciple quickly reacted. The instructor continued to attack the disciple relentlessly, but the disciple kept on dodging the attacks, and she would even sometimes use her bow to shoot an arrow at the target in the distance. The disciple was dodging and attacking at the same time. Their display left a deep impression on Meishio, who was immediately in awe. A few minutes later, the instructor stopped attacking the disciple and said to her, Good job. Thank you, instructor. The disciple bowed to her. The instructor then returned to Meixia's side and said to her, Did you see that? That's what archery looks like once you're proficient enough. Those who say archers are useless once their opponents close in on them are all worth less than shit. As that disciple had just demonstrated, one can defend themselves and attack simultaneously if they're skilled enough. However, to do that kind of thing requires intensive training and good movement. Your body must react instantaneously, and your body must keep up with your body's reaction, or you will only stumble and fall. If you intend on learning archery seriously, come here every day and I will drill everything I know into you. I don't care if you're Player Yuan's caretaker. Even if you're Player Yuan himself, I will not go easy on you, the instructor said to her. Meishio nodded. Although the instructor couldn't see it due to the mask, there was a serious and passionate expression on her face. Fortunately for her, she had already learned a movement technique inside. If she could learn this technique in the real world just like Yuan did with his movement technique, perhaps she could integrate it with her archery skills. Meanwhile, inside the building on the first floor, Yuan was covered in sweat from head to toe as he swung the wooden sword in his arms thousands of times without stopping. A couple of hours have passed since Meishio left him, but he was too focused to realize this. Suddenly, Yuan stopped swinging his sword when he felt a presence approach him. He quickly used divine sense to see if it was Meishio who had returned, but he quickly realized that it was someone else. Someone he didn't recognize, yet he had this feeling that he has met this individual before. It was a handsome young man with a somewhat heroic aura around him. Hello, Player Yuan. I apologize if I interrupted your training, but I cannot resist my urges, so I came here to see if you wanted to have a friendly exchange. I'll wear my manners. My surname is Wang Ming. The handsome young man who looked to be around the same age as Yuan introduced himself. Don't call me Player Yuan. It feels weird, especially since we are not in cultivation online. Yuan said to him, and he continued, You can just call me Yuan. I understand, Yuan. Then what about my proposal? Wang Ming asked again. You want to fight? Yuan said in a calm voice. No, not a fight. Just a friendly exchange between two sword users. I have been watching you for a while now, silently admire your sharp sword strikes, and I began wondering what it'll feel like to be in front of it, receiving such a powerful strike. Wang Ming explained his motives. After a moment of silence, Yuan said, Sure. Let's do it. Now that he was used to feeling the sword in his grasp again, he wanted to do something more intensive, and this exchange will satisfy such desires perfectly. We can find an empty area and do our exchange there. Since this is just a friendly exchange, we don't need to use the arena. Of course, if you want to do that, we can go there. Wang Ming said to him. It's fine, we can do it here. Wang Ming nodded and then he asked, Do you need some time to rest? After all, you have been practicing quite intensively for a long time now. Imperfectly fine, Yuan said, taking Wang Ming by surprise. How can someone feel perfectly fine after swinging such a heavy sword for many hours with barely any rest? Aren't his arms sore? Or was his body made of metal so he cannot experience such feelings? A few moments later, Yuan and Wang Ming found an empty spot in the gymnasium and decided to use that spot for their spar. The disciples inside the gymnasium quickly noticed what they were doing and their blood immediately pumped with excitement. Everybody look over there. Wang Ming, our #1 sword genius, is going to fight player Yuan. What? The disciples quickly gathered and surrounded Yuan and Wang Ming, but they made sure to not get so close that it would disturb their fight. Not only did they not want to disturb such an exciting fight, but they also didn't want to get hit by either Yuan or Wang Ming. Chapter 537, Sword of Dominance. Whenever you're ready, Yuan. Wang Ming said as he held his wooden sword in front of him. Yuan also held his sword in front of him and tightly grasped the handle and nodded, I am ready. Then here I come. Wang Ming immediately kicked his feet and lunged at Yuan before swinging his sword. Clang. Yuan blocked the strike with ease. Wang Ming didn't think too much of it and continued to attack Yuan relentlessly, displaying precise and powerful sword techniques. While he blocked every attack, Yuan examined Wang Ming's cultivation base, and to his surprise, Wang Ming emitted an aura belonging to the 7th level spirit warrior. Besides the Grand Elders, Wang Ming has the highest cultivation base out of everyone he has met before. Of course, this was only possible since Wang Ming belonged to the Wang family that has known about cultivation way before the rest of the world, allowing him to start cultivating at a very young age. However, even then he was only at the 7th level spirit warrior, still 3 entire levels below Yuan. Clang, clang, clang. As the fight got longer, it also grew more intensive. The spectators could hardly blink, as they feared that they might miss the decisive moment the second they decide to blink. Furthermore, every time their swords clashed, it would make the spectators' hearts throb with excitement, almost like there was a drum playing. I can't break through his defenses, and his strikes are incredibly heavy. Wang Ming was at a loss for words. Although had expected Yuan to be a challenge for him, he didn't think it would feel so powerless, almost like he was before an immovable mountain. Since it has come to this, let's see if you can handle my sword technique. Wang Ming suddenly stopped his attacks for a moment to cover his wooden sword in his spiritual energy. Yuan immediately noticed the change in Wang Ming's sword, but he didn't panic. Let's see how powerful his sword technique is. Yuan eagerly anticipated Wang Ming's sword technique, silently wondering to himself if he would be able to defend against it. Yuan, if you can defend against this sword technique, it's your win, Wang Ming announced to him. This surprised the spectators. Wang Ming is using his sword technique. Isn't that too much in a friendly exchange? I think he's doing it because he's left with no other choice. Meaning that he doesn't believe that he can defeat player Yuan without this sword technique. Just how powerful is player Yuan to push Wang Ming to such a state? Not only does player Yuan have his mysterious movement technique that makes it impossible to hit him, but even his sword mastery appears to be very good. If you ask me, I think he belongs to a secluded cultivation family that's outside the 6 spiritual families. Do these secluded families really exist? I mean, there are always rumors about their existence, but we haven't seen any of them even to this day. Meanwhile, after taking a moment to prepare his sword technique, Wang Ming was finally ready. Here it comes, Yuan. Wang Ming warned him before releasing the sword technique. Yuan tightened his grasp on the sword and prepared for it. Sword of Dominance. Wang Ming's eyes flickered with a golden glow for a moment before he released his sword, sending a semi-transparent golden arc of light at Yuan. Yuan immediately used his sword to block the incoming arc of light, but he had a bad feeling about it. However, he wasn't going to dodge it and he intended on taking it head-on. Whoosh! The arc of light flew at Yuan at incredible speed and arrived before him almost instantly after it was released, and the moment it touched the wooden sword in Yuan's grasp, it sliced the wood easily. If it were not for the metal core inside the wooden sword, the arc of light would have gone straight through. However, the metal wasn't enough to defend against the arc of light and was also being cut. Dodge it. Wang Ming realized that had gone too far with this technique and might actually harm Yuan, perhaps even kill him. Of course, Yuan also had a feeling that this arc of light would go through his body once it cuts through the sword. And right as before the metal core was cut in half, Yuan sensed the danger and subconsciously reacted. Whoosh! A profound aura emitted from Yuan's body, sending chills down everyone's spine, and the half-broken sword in Yuan's grasp suddenly gushed with a sharp aura that sliced the arc of light in half and seemingly with ease. What kind of sword technique is that? Wang Ming exclaimed in a shocked voice when he witnessed his arc of light destroyed. Yuan also didn't know what happened and looked at the sword, and to his complete surprise, there was a familiar yet otherworldly aura covering the sword. It was sword chi. He had somehow managed to use sword chi. However, the moment Yuan lost his focus, the sword chi also disappeared. The instant the sword chi disappeared, the half-broken sword completely broke in half, leaving everyone there speechless. After a long moment of silence, a defeated smile appeared on Wang Ming's face, and he clasped his hands before Yuan. Thank you for the exchange, Yuan. It was an incredible experience for me, especially since I don't usually have anybody that can fight me equally, much less defeat me. We should spar with each other more often, without using any sword techniques, of course. Likewise, it was also a good experience for me. Yuan clasped his hands together while still holding the broken sword. Now that is out of the way. If you don't mind, can you tell me what kind of sword technique you just used? I have never seen anything like that before, not even in cultivation online. Wang Ming then asked him, his gaze filled with interest. Chapter 538, A Worthy Opponent. Of course, if you don't want to tell me, that's fine as well. Wang Ming added. After a moment of silence, Yuan said, It's sword chi. Sword chi? I have never heard of this technique before. Where did you learn such a powerful technique? He responded calmly. Wang Ming's eyes widened with surprise. As far as he was aware, there hasn't been a single person that has successfully learned a technique from that wasn't a cultivation technique. Congratulations, Yuan. You're the first person I know of that has successfully learned a martial technique from. Wang Ming said after his daze. Anyways, it's getting late. I will be here again tomorrow if you'd like to spar again. Wang Ming then said. Yuan nodded. Once Wang Ming left the scene, the crowd around them also dispersed. However, they didn't stop talking about Yuan and Wang Ming's spar for the rest of the day. Shortly after Wang Ming left, Meishio returned to the first floor. I'm finished for the day. Are you ready to leave or do you want to train more? Meishio asked Yuan after returning to him. Let's go home. I had enough training today. Yuan said. Then he noticed the bow and arrows in Meixius' grasp. Where'd you get those? The instructor gave them to me so that I could practice even at home, she said. Looks like you had fun today, Yuan chuckled. Yes, archery was more entertaining than I'd anticipated. I think I will stick with it for a little longer. Sometime later they returned to the Immortal caves. Yuan sat down and prepared to remove his mask, but Meishio quickly said, Wait a moment. Don't take your mask off just yet. Let me look around the place for a little bit. Yuan wasn't sure what she was trying to do, but he nodded his head regardless. Then he watched as Meishio searched every nook and cranny of the place. What are you looking for? He decided to ask her. If there is any surveillance in this place, she calmly responded. Like hidden cameras? I don't think they would do something like that, Yuan said in a somewhat dazed voice. I know, but we can never be too careful. Many minutes later, once Meishio was satisfied with the results, she removed her mask and said, The place looks clear. Yuan also removed his mask afterward. I'm tired. I don't think I have ever practiced this intensively before, not even in. Yuan released a long sigh. Sometime later, Meishio asked, Do you want to take a shower first? Yes, I have been sweating all day. You can go inside first. I will follow you after I unpack our clothes. Okay. Yuan then went into the bathroom that was larger than had anticipated, and there was even a square bathtub in the corner. After removing his clothes and tossing them inside the laundry basket, Yuan took a seat and started rinsing his body with warm water. Yuan noticed something different about this water. Compared to the water in his apartment, this water actually contained a hint of spiritual energy. The spiritual energy in this place is so potent that it even affects the water? He mumbled to himself. A few minutes later, Meishio entered the bathroom and started washing his back. Once that was done, she assisted him in the front for a couple of minutes before rinsing him off. After drying his body, Yuan left the bathroom to wear some clothes that were neatly folded on the desk. Meanwhile, Meishio stayed in the bathroom to clean herself next. Once they were both clean and getting hungry, they realized something. There's no kitchen in this place? So we have to eat outside? Yuan raised his eyebrows. He didn't mind eating outside, but that would require him to remove his mask. We can get the food there and eat it back here, Meishio suggested. Let's do that. Yuan agreed. They then wore their masks that had been washed by Meishio and prepared to leave the Immortal Caves, but right as they left the place, they noticed a figure approaching their direction. Senior Wang. They immediately recognized the identity of this individual. Good evening, Yuan. Where are you heading this late? Senior Wang asked them. We are planning on going to the cafeteria for some food since there's no kitchen in the Immortal Cave, he said. Senior Wang chuckled and said, That's exactly why I am here. I forgot to tell you about that, I'm sorry. Anyways, the cafeteria is half an hour away from the Immortal Caves, and it's mostly for the ordinary disciples, so we don't normally go there when we're training in the Immortal Caves. Then where do you go? Yuan asked. We either have someone deliver it to us, or we go to a special cafeteria that's made specifically for people training at the Immortal Caves. Senior Wang pointed to a certain path and said, Follow this path and you should arrive at a restaurant called Silver Restaurant. It's only a 5-minute walk. She then pointed to another path and said, There's also an open area where you can do some outdoor grilling if that's your thing. I understand. Thank you. By the way, I heard you had a spar with my grandson today, and you defeated him spectacularly. Senior Wang suddenly mentioned their exchange today. I knew he was from your family since he had the same surname, but I didn't think he was your grandson. Yes, you should have seen his face when he told me about how Head lost to you. I have never seen him so happy despite being the loser. I think he's just happy to have a worthy opponent that can challenge him since he can defeat even the elite disciples quite easily. And she continued, He will surely approach you for more spars in the future. If it ever gets annoying, you can tell me and I will do something about it. Chapter 539, A Single Bed. After their short conversation, Senior Wang left the scene while Yuan and Meishio made their way to the Silver Restaurant. 5 minutes later, they arrived before a medium-sized building that was painted metallic white, making it appear to be made out of silver. They quickly went inside and to their surprise, it was completely empty. In fact, there were only 2 tables in the whole building, a small square table with 2 seats and a large round table with 8 seats. I don't recognize either of you. Are you new? The old man standing behind the reception asked them. Yes, today is our first day at the Jaded Garden, said Yuan. Then you probably don't know this, but we only serve those training at the Immortal Caves, he said. We are training at the Immortal Caves, Yuan said, surprising the old man. After all, how can someone who just joined the faction receive the privilege to train at the Immortal Caves? On their first day, no less. Meishio could tell that the old man didn't believe them based on his expression, so she said, Yuan, show him the medallion you got from Senior Wang. Yuan nodded and retrieved the medallion, showing it to the old man. The old man was completely speechless now. Even if he didn't want to believe it, he had to before the presence of the medallion. The old man then straightened his back and bowed to them. I apologize for doubting you too. Please forgive me. Yuan nodded and said, We're just here for some food. Of course. Tell me what you'd like to eat and he'll cook something for you. The old man said. Do you have a menu? Yuan then asked. No. I can cook almost anything as long as I have the ingredients. Even if I don't have all of the ingredients, I will somehow manage, said the old man in a confident voice. Anything? Yuan raised his eyebrows. He wasn't sure what he wanted to eat. Then how about you cook us your best dish, or whatever you recommend? Yuan said after pondering for a moment. Sure thing. Give me about 20 minutes since everything will be cooked fresh. In the meantime you can do whatever. Oh, one more thing. Would you like to eat here or would you like the food to go? To go. I understand. The old man then went to the back of the room and proceeded to cook. Meanwhile, Yuan and Meishio went outside to smell the fresh air alongside the old man's cooking that grew more delicious as time went on. About 20 minutes later, they went back inside to grab the food. What's your name? People call me Chef San. You can call me Yuan. Feng, Meishio said. Yuan and Feng, huh? What unique names. Anyways, I hope you enjoy the food. I'll see you two tomorrow. After getting their food, Yuan and Meishio returned to their immortal caves, their mouths salivating the entire time as they couldn't wait to taste whatever Chef San cooked, as the fragrance just smelled too good. Once they returned home, they immediately opened the food, and to their surprise there was a lot of food, more than one would anticipate for two people. Why did he give us so much food? Does he really expect two of us to eat all of this? Meishio mumbled as there were enough to feed 4, even 5 people. Maybe he was feeling generous since it's our first day here, Yuan said, not thinking too much about it. Thus they began eating the food shortly after. Heavens! The flavor is indescribably delicious. I have never tasted food this amazing before outside of cultivation online. Yuan exclaimed after taking his first bite. Meishio nodded her head in agreement. Besides the food at the Dragon Pavilion, nothing could compare to Chef San's cooking skills. The food was so amazing that Meishio was wondering if she should ask the old man to teach her how to cook better. Of course, Meishio is a pretty amazing cook herself, but compared to Chef San, who has decades of cooking experience within a cultivation family, the disparity was too vast, and it wasn't fair to compare them. I'm definitely going back tomorrow morning for breakfast, Yuan said after they finished eating all of the food. You can really eat. Even though she already knew about his massive appetite, it was still surprising to see him eat so much food. Sometime later, after washing their face and brushing their teeth, they went to the bedroom to sleep. However, there was a problem. There's only one bed? Yuan and Meishio stood before the only bed in the entire place. After all, immortal caves were built with a single person in mind, since they are mostly for training, and most people cultivate alone, so there wasn't any need for a second bed. At least it's big enough to fit both of us, Yuan said. It's okay, I can sleep outside, Meishio said. Although she had slept on the same bed with him on the airplane, she had the courage to do so only because it was for a single day. Doing so for many days was too much for her at the moment. That's not good. I don't mind even if you sleep with me, and where are you going to sleep outside? There are no couches. Yuan said, not minding that he has to sleep with Meishio as they have already done it once. Meishio didn't know how to respond to his question since Shed said such words without thinking about it. Yuan then got inside the bed and under the blankets before patting the space beside him. Come sleep with me, he said in a calm voice. Meishio sighed inwardly. Although she had taught him some common sense, there are some things that cannot be taught through words alone. Meishio eventually gave up and entered the bed with Yuan, spending the rest of the night together in the same bed. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.